They talk about an SSS Rink dungeon called the Yggdrasil Labyrinth, because Yggdrasil isn't just a place, it's the world tree at the center of everything, propping up all 9 worlds. People immediately pointed out that this labyrinth ranked among the world's 7 most brutal, hardest mazes. 7 labyrinths still lie untouched, packed with secret treasures, and a month ago, after they crushed the ranked dungeon and earned the right to SSS ranks, they were reported to be heading straight for the Yggdrasil Labyrinth. The heroes locked in with an A-ranked squad called Gunkino Dongwa, and the story makes it crystal clear. Every single member is a no-nonsense pro. Ancient witch blood courses through the black magician's veins, and people even whisper that calling her a witch was considered totally off-limits. That enchantress, a master of the dual blades, slashes in with lightning and wind power coursing through her swords. She even sneers that her foes are small fry, because you can't miss her. Sword St. Jimno. The attacker yelped as he pointed at the hulking, muscle-bound defender, an absolute nightmare who can land blows that wreck everything. Then he named him the warrior with the great sword, Suglensed. The hero blurts out that he loves how the blade sinks into flesh, and the sword-wielding guy snaps, raging that it should be burned. Their leader, Loki, is a straight-up genius, crushing it in every fight, commanding the team with unmatched leadership and dominating with magic. And just like that, the healer white magician, Ray Dean Hewell, everyone calls him Ray, hurried over, eyes wide with worry. The guy's totally baffled as Ray just stands there, so he blurts that he needs healing because Himeno's leg is busted. Then a girl named Suglensed gets called out. Himeno claimed her leg was just a tiny scratch, said it didn't need any care. Then the guy pushed back, insisted on healing just to be safe, and called Ray again. A backpacked guy came sprinting in, folded over her wounded leg and started healing it, flinging his hands around like he was pulling the cure straight out of the air. Panting hard, the guy blurts, "I've got one problem," and drops right onto the girl's leg. Rage flared in the heroine's chest. She refused to let him crash into her. Disgust burned like fire, so she yanked herself up and stormed out, certain it was the absolute worst day of her life. Loki blurted out that Ray was okay, then shoved a glass jar filled with liquid into his hands. They tell him it's a potion meant to blast his strength back into his body, and before he can even breathe, they tip it straight into his mouth. He shot Loki an apology, because all his hard-earned stuff got burned up thanks to him. Both girls and the sword-wielding guy stand there in eerie silence. Dark-haired girl says nothing, while the second snaps that he's a burden. The sword guy just laughs, telling him he's way too kind. Ray rages at what he's seeing, but Loki snaps at the kid to ignore it all and just rest until he can move, because the real killer is simple. He burned every last bit of his magic with that healing spell once. His magic tank is pitifully small. No matter how minor the wound, each spell drains him dry, and once that power is gone, he can't even move. That's a disaster for a white mage because he can only heal one person at a time. It's downright horrifying to watch because he can't even make up for it with raw strength. Hell, compared to the others, his combat power is nowhere near. Still, right after all that chaos, Loki didn't give up. He pulled the main character into his team. Ray pushed himself up, stared at his trembling hand, and whispered, "I don't even know why," but he'd recovered enough to move again. Loki strides up to the guy and asks if he can move, and the guy snaps back that he's totally fine, he'll catch up with them right away. So Ray starts drifting toward them, slow and steady. Even with everything going on, the main character is still glowing with happiness. Because he picked this path, this team is the one place where he gets to be fully himself. The girl, too, ponytails bouncing with pure frustration, snaps that he's only getting in the way. Loki blazes, "Time to drop to the next floor," and makes it crystal clear, beat everyone to the very bottom, claim the right to be the first crew to conquer the Yggdrasil Labyrinth and seize the secret treasure waiting at the end. They made quick work of the A-rank dungeon with zero drama, so this should feel the same. Then the group pushes ahead while Ray lingers behind, silent as stone. He tells himself he's gotta do his absolute best so he won't be a burden on them. Little do they know, that moment hasn't hit them yet. They had no clue what nightmare was waiting inside the SSS-ranked dungeon. Then they stumbled onto the 125th floor, a broken sword clattered to the ground, and someone snapped and cursed at the sky. Everyone sprawled there, wiped out, while the guy gasps for air and blurts, "What just happened?" Because these monsters were at least S-rank, maybe even worse. Breathing hard, a worn-out Loki slumps and admits it. those monsters are going to be insanely strong. Every enemy they'd faced up to now was a rank, but the jump to S rank was pure nightmare fuel, like heaven and earth, and these foes weren't just strong, they were flat out impossible to beat. The tired girl says this is the worst possible nightmare. She doesn't want to die here, not when those monsters only showed up on the 5th floor. So why is it happening to them right now? The protagonist stays completely silent, saying nothing at all, while everyone around him is fraying at the edges, so he braces, hoping they won't take that rage out on me. He whips around to everyone and says, "We should come back," because the idea of them showing up again is too terrifying to even think about. Then the girl steps in and spills every detail she knows. The girl plops down and tells them they don't need to say it again, then hits them with, "So how do we get it back now?" The next second, they move up to this floor way too smoothly. Before anyone could even blink, they were standing on a ledge where backing out just wasn't an option. Right now, they're too weak to break free, so there's only one escape route left, and it looks like they're going to have to gamble everything on it. The guy freezes in shock and blurts out, "Wait, do you mean that stone we found on the lowest floor of the A-rank dungeon?" The girl nods like she's holding onto a lifeline, saying maybe that's exactly what they need to escape, while the main character stands there, staring, ready for hope. That teleportation stone is a wild magical relic. Once you own it, you can vanish and land anywhere you want, but the moment you use it, its magic fizzles out and it's completely drained, never to work again. The box is stuffed with crystals and Loki grabs one, saying there are only 5 total, just enough for everyone. He warns it's worth thousands of gold coins, a ridiculously rare prize. But when life or money is on the table, you can't stall, even if it's priceless, because Loki says it loud, life always wins and the time for action has come. The protagonist checks the time in his head, then realizes Loki is sprinting for distance before he bolts from here, and if that guy really were the leader, he'd smash the stone into action immediately. And yeah, just like you'd expect from the greatest genius to come along since the Adventurers Guild was founded, Loki Vigrador is nothing short of legendary. Loki stalks up to the protagonist, stares him down, and declares that from this moment on, Ray is getting kicked out of the team, leaving the protagonist reeling in pure shock. He stumbles back, baffled. How did this even happen? Then his foot catches on a rock and he tumbles down hard, and there, right in front of him, stands Loki. The main character couldn't get Loki's words out of his head, so he finally snapped, asking the guy, stunned and frozen in place, how being banished was supposed to make sense and why he just shut down like that. Loki shoots Ray a sharp question. "Did you hear what I just said?" And Ray snaps back that he caught every word. Now Loki wants to know why he's getting banished in the first place. Out of nowhere, a massive stone crashes into the protagonist's cheek with a brutal thud. He drops to his knees instantly and howls, clutching his smashed, wounded face. The guy who used to be his partner, yeah, the same one behind it, grips the rest of the stones and leans in, asking Ray if he truly has to spell everything out before it finally sinks in. Suddenly, the girl slams her heel into his hand and snaps, calling him incredibly stupid and utterly annoying. The girl towers over him and tells him straight up that he keeps stealing glances at her every single time they fight. She snaps loudly that what he did is disgusting, but he tries to talk, and the second she sees him staring again, rage explodes and she kicks him straight in the face. The main character is totally wiped out, sprawled there, refusing to admit it, while he just watches everyone's every move, ready to spring into action the moment someone gets seriously hurt. 3 former partners hover right above him, staring down with pure disgust, while only the dark-haired girl hangs back doing nothing. He glances at her once, then snaps his gaze away. Loki cuts in and says this level 3 white mage can't keep up when monsters get ruthless. He can heal only once, and the moment his magic dies, he's too drained to even move. So tell me, what's a worse weight to carry than that? Ray tells the guy he's not wrong. His magic is draining at an insane pace. He made up for it by doubling down on everything else, studying their enemies to spot every weak point, tracking dungeon details, cooking meals, and handling the housework, so the whole crew could march out in comfort. But Loki just scoffs at the shocked boy and tells him he clearly has no clue how much this team is being asked to carry. This squad has to crush the demon lord who's putting the whole world on the chopping block, and if their white mage is just as useless as the last one, they're doomed. He jabs a finger at the main character and growls that he's got nowhere near enough strength. yet the guy just keeps sprawled on the ground. He stares at the ground, doubts himself, like maybe he's not strong enough, and then the question hits, why would he ever choose this? Suddenly, he's flooded with memories of himself as a kid. When Ray was just 11, why the heck did Loki pick him as a servant? Only to start with beatings until one person finally stepped in and offered the boy a lifeline. It was Loki grinning like he actually meant it, while the protagonist stared, thinking, yeah, there's no way you picked me for no reason. With a voice shaking like a leaf, the main character blurts out to Loki, why me? Ray spirals over his worth, determined to guard the place that's his home, and then Loki snaps at him. Doesn't he get it? Because honestly, he's just plain stupid. Loki shrugs off the whole thing, saying it's got no hidden twist, just a simple plan. He needed a low-cost servant who could heal everyone. When he bought him, he was nothing but a broke E-rank adventurer. He'd have hired anyone as long as it was cheap, and they knew how to cast as a white mage, so Ray can't believe it. Loki frowns, weighs it out, and says, if I'm thinking about it, not everyone will, so I'm done dealing with someone as useless as Ray. He throws his arms wide and declares, this time I'm picking a normal white mage. Then he points out there are only 3 A-ring groups left. One of them is theirs, meaning they can grab any adventurer they want. Ray's fist tightens until his knuckles go white. The protagonist panics, thinking, if this keeps up, I'm getting banished for real. And he blurts it out right now, so that has to mean he's about to leave him stuck on the deep floor of the Yggdrasil labyrinth where ferocious monsters prowl. Loki refuses to burn the teleportation stone on it, so there's a real chance he's already tracked down the perfect spot to ditch it. He screams that none of it is happening as Loki closes in, and the moment he realizes he's about to be left here, panic hits. He's terrified of dying, so he turns straight to Loki. He sobs into his tears, begging for one shot to become even stronger, because he won't die like this and the fear is crushing him. Loki presses for answers again, promises he can heal that wound, then, right when it matters, he drives a sword straight through the main character. Suddenly, the main character erupts into screams of agony. Loki steps in and demands he let himself be cured or it's over for him because the pain is nearly killing him. The girl grins, practically savoring Loki's cruelty while the guy beside her keeps laughing. Then the main character's eyes go wide and terror hits as he realizes he can't breathe anymore. The protagonist's hands scramble toward the sword jammed inside him and he yanks it free with a crushing grip, bloody and brutal, as the guy gasps that he's dying. He hurls it off to the side, then sucks in ragged breaths and slams healing magic into his own body. Loki stares, stunned, as a blazing glow bursts from the wound, and just like that, it seals shut and heals to perfection. Right after that, the main character crumples to the ground and Loki calmly says the wound is fully healed because the only thing he's really good at is healing fast. Ray sprawls there, chest heaving, breathing like it hurts. The main character snaps to the truth. This can't be the end, and he realizes he can't just fall again, he has to rise, and when he does, everyone's jaw drops at what he pulls off. He decides he has to prove he's worth something, and the main character barely manages to get upright again. Loki's shocked. He tells him that usually after that he can't even move. Ray asks if this is enough and Loki just pauses, thinking it through. Loki laughs and says it was all a joke, then dares him, "You really thought we'd accept you?" The guy shoves the protagonist aside. He tumbles down and they tell him the magic stone is way too valuable to waste on him, plus they're saying this is the perfect chance to get rid of it for good. Loki slings his blade toward him, shouting his goodbye, and it lands right beside the protagonist. Loki tells him, "This is the knife I gave you, I'm just getting it back." Because without a weapon he'll be too terrified to live here and everyone swears he's lucky and can survive with it, but the girl snaps back, saying he's doomed to rot here for the rest of his life. Everyone bursts into laughter and vanishes in a flash of teleportation, while the main character crawls through the dirt, snatches his knife and clutches it with tears streaming down his face. The main character can't stop wondering why he let that kind of treatment slide for so long, and it drags him back to every moment he was beat. He swallowed it just to hang on to his job, and even then it didn't do a damn thing. The main character crumples on the ground, stares up at a towering creature ahead and realizes, oh no, that it's a monster, not a trick. his own body won't listen and then the thing starts moving. Ray pants through the chaos, staring at the situation like, is this really that serious, or am I the one getting dragged through all of this for nothing? The main character spirals in his head over his miserable life. His family was ripped away by monsters, he was forced into servitude and they chained him in a cage for years. Then Loki snatched it up, only for everyone to turn on him, beat him down and leave him completely lost like he has no idea what his life is even for. Then the main character plummets off a cliff, launches into midair like he's flying, and blood gushes from his mouth. Someone snaps at the main character and calls him pathetic. Then Ray drops into the water with a huge splash. Ray can't stop wondering what kind of voice this is because he's totally heard it before. Then it keeps calling to him again and again, demanding he finally speak back, and Ray's left completely baffled. He snaps his eyes open and bam, there's a blonde girl with wide, shining eyes staring right back at him, and she tells him he's finally awake. The protagonist stared at her with one sharp eye, asking if she was really a girl. She blinked, baffled, and told him it was obvious she looked like one. He's stunned to see her in a place like this and he can't stop staring until she snaps, "Why are you looking at me?" Then she presses him for the truth. "Are you so hooked on my cuteness?" He swallows hard and admits, "Yeah, you're cute." She snaps into a blush, asks if he's dead serious, then grins and says yeah, she's adorable, so he better go right ahead and praise her again. He blurts that this isn't what he meant to say, then glares and asks, "Why is someone like you in a dungeon?" And right after he demands, "Which floor are we on? If you know, then tell me." But she tells him to calm down. She tells him, "I can't say why I'm here, but I'll give you one clue what floor I'm on." She blurts out that they're already on the 200th floor, the very bottom of the Yggdrasil labyrinth, and the guy just freezes, stunned and completely baffled. He asks again if they're trapped on the absolute bottom floor of the Yggdrasil labyrinth, because if they are, there's no way out of here. He drops his head and kneels on the dirt, flat out denying everything, and the girl turns to him like, "So, do you want to get out of here?" He can, because he's sitting on a secret treasure, and when the main character hears it, his jaw drops in pure shock. Ray fires off the question again, what does she mean by secret treasure, and how would she even get it? The girl just grins and says, "Duh, you mean the secret treasure of Yggdrasil." The girl leans in and demands, "Can't you feel Yggdrasil's aura?" And the truth hits him hard because Yggdrasil already cursed him. She flashes a grin and points out that his rotten left eye is the proof. Then the guy yanks his closed eye tight and snaps, "So what the hell does cursed even mean?" She tells him his magic circuit is now tied directly to Yggdrasil, meaning he's been handed endless magical power. The girl tells him it all hinges on how he wields this treasure. If he cracks it, he'll escape. So yeah, he's got luck on his side. Still stunned, the main character can't look away from the girl, then blurts the question again about the curse of Yggdrasil and that unlimited magical power. Ray leans in and demands who she is. She smiles and tells him her name is Norn. The protagonist presses again for her name and Norn snaps that the guy looks totally lost, like he's heard it before somewhere. Meanwhile, the girl is about to make her move. She grills the guy, saying that based on how he looks, she reckons he's a white mage. So, is she right? Then she dares him to prove it by trying healing. He stares at the girl, totally thrown off, then blurts out in awkward honesty that he can use him. She studies him for a beat and asks what's wrong, and he instantly clenches his fists. He admits that the second he uses healing, he'll drain every last drop of his magic, and collapse so hard he won't be able to move. That's why he can't use healing, so Norn marches up, slaps the guy on the head and dares him to try it anyway, convincing him until he finally agrees. The main character unleashes healing and a burst of magical light erupts. Then the girl stuns the surprised guy by asking how he feels. He touches himself, then jolts in surprise. He feels zero fatigue at all. Ray stares at his palm in shock and blurts, "What's happening?" because his magic power still hasn't vanished. Norn stands right in front of him, cackling with joy, telling him this is far from the end, and then grins, asking if his body feels like it's about to burst with magic. "This right here is Yggdrasil's true magic. Now imagine it," the guy blurts it out loud in pure shock. The girl tells him, just like she already said, his magic circuit is finally hooked up to Yggdrasil. Most folks' magic power pours straight from the heart of the magic circuit, the gate that opens the spell. but once that core is drained, normal healing can't just put it back. When he got carried off and ended up here, the curse of Yggdrasil slammed into him and ripped his magic core from his left eye, sealing it with Yggdrasil instead. He clamps a hand over his eye and demands, "So as long my magic is fueled by Yggdrasil, I can cast as many spells as I want." The girl flashes a smile and swears, "That's exactly how it is." He can burn through unlimited magical power anytime he wants. The main character snaps, "Why did all this happen? What did I do to get tied to Yggdrasil?" The girl pushes, asking if he truly wants the truth. He hesitates for a split second, then blurts out that of course he does, because in the end, it's his own body on the line. She blurts that he's cursed and she swears the reason is tied to that source. Then she grabs the moment and tells him to follow her. Norn hauls the protagonist to the water's edge and tells him, "Yeah, you've been swimming here, then I yanked you out." He gulps down that fact, admits he kept swallowing water when the current swept him away and shoots back, "So that's really what happened." A girl with a radiant smile whispers that this water is one of Yggdrasil's hidden treasures, the tears of the world tree, and swears it can even resurrect the dead, but she's not done yet because she's about to say something else. She tells the guy, "That tree you just leaned on, it's the world tree and it's what builds the dungeon." The main character practically blurts out, shocked, "This is the exact same world tree, the bottom level no adventurer has ever conquered, and the treasure of Yggdrasil everyone's been chasing?" Now it's crystal clear to him. Ray reveals the dungeon's real treasure, an unlimited source of magical power forged from the world's own work. He pushed through the chaos and somehow got his hands on this treasure. So yeah, this is the kind of power that comes from the SSS rank dungeon's secret loot. She blurts that her garden is an SSS rank dungeon and he just stares, asking if she's messing with him. Then he doubles back, questions the garden again, and it finally clicks. Now he can't help it, he's hooked and desperate to learn everything about her. He remembers she couldn't explain why she was there, but she could at least point out which floor they were on. The protagonist whips around to Norn and asks if she's really alone in here, and Norn answers that this dungeon has no one else at all. So he presses, stunned, asking whether she's been surviving in this place by herself all this time. With a soft, pleased sigh, the girl smiles and basically admits, "Yep, I'm way stronger than I look." He asks who the strong one really is and he can barely wrap his head around it. Because yeah, strength isn't tied to age, but she looks about 12 and this dungeon, at least as he knows, has an age limit. Norn pushes him to explain, asking if he doesn't believe her, what else could he be thinking? The girl blurts out that she can wipe out S-rank monsters on the spot and the guy shoots back, "No way, this is crazy." Because even their whole crew never stood a single chance against an S-rank. Honestly, the way he looks makes it hard to believe, but it doesn't matter. He's already got his answer, so he snaps the decision and bolts out of here. The main character stares up in silence, thinking, "I just want to get outside." But first he has to crush S-rank monsters. Even if his magical power is infinite, he's not a swordsman or a battle mage. He's stuck as a plain white mage and the panic is real. He can't even picture how he'll escape this place, staring at his own hands like, if I get out, then what happens next? So yeah, once they kicked him out of the group, there's nowhere left for him to return, nothing left for him to cling to, and a tear slides down his cheek. He wipes the tears off his face, staring at the emptiness, thinking, if I've got nothing, maybe I should just stay here. Ray can't stop thinking that maybe the best life he'll ever get is staying in this dungeon for the rest of his days. Until the very end. The main character clenches his fist because he can't save anyone anymore. Then the guy struggles to speak and the girl eyes him with sharp, burning curiosity. He pokes his own cheek and asks if he can stay here and the girl instantly says yes. Then the moment it hits her, her eyes widen and she blurts out in shock if he really plans to live here. Ray admits he might be stuck here longer than he wants and the girl shoots back, "Are you really serious?" Because didn't he promise he'd be getting out of here? The protagonist grabs his knife, apologizes for flipping his decision, and asks if she's okay with it, whether he can really stay here, then immediately fires off, "So what do you eat around here?" She teases him for changing his mind so fast, but before he can respond, she dives right into food. He's not even supposed to eat here, so the protagonist blinks in shock, then demands the answer again. Yggdrasil's magic feeds his body nonstop, so even if he skips food, he won't die and tiny cuts snap shut almost instantly. At this point, you could call him practically immortal. The protagonist stared at his own hands in pure shock and demanded, "So, is immortality real?" Norn grinned and said he was right on the edge of it, yet one brutal truth hit: if his head got cut off, he'd die. The girl begged him to unleash healing so he could taste Yggdrasil's magic power. Then she watched in shock as his wounds were already healed before he even cast the spell. Now she says he should stay, so he decides to stick around, tells her to explain what she means. The girl bluntly calls him a weakling. Stay or run, he's just monster bait now. Monsters can storm in here at any moment, so the only way he survives is by getting stronger fast. So it's not a safe zone. Great, because life never makes it easy. He realizes he'll have to give it everything. Norn grins and says that's perfect, then promises to teach him the basics. He has no clue just how powerful she really is, but he has to get strong enough that she won't be stuck carrying him, and he refuses to let this happen again, so the main character makes a promise to himself. He'll get stronger. 3 years have blown by. Now the main character is planted on the 180th floor, and a strange sound is blasting out of nowhere. The protagonist clamps down on his weapon with white-knuckled rage and glances sideways. Then the ground under his feet splits open with a violent crack. A monstrous snake-like beast rips out of the ground, and the main character rockets into the air, staring straight at it, wide-eyed. The snake's tail tip is razor-sharp. Then she lunges at the main character and tries to stab him with it. The monster's tail is already snapping right beside him, so he tightens his focus, pours in his magic, and slams the attack into it. Then the snake starts shrieking, the cut-off tail crashes onto the ground, and the main character leaps onto the monster's back and rides it. Then bam, he's suddenly right beside her face, driving his sword straight into her forehead. And as he stares at the snake, he turns back and apologizes to her. Suddenly, the snake's sword erupts in bright light. A brutal shockwave tears through the air, and the snake gets dropped for good. The snake crumples to the ground, throwing up a cloud of dust, and the protagonist lands clean on his feet, then freezes, staring at his own hand in shock. "I did it!" He realizes he finally beat him. Then boom, he clenches his fist, smiling like he just won everything. That guy grins and tells Norn, "I did it!" And Norn beams right back while she tells Ray he's already a totally different person now because he crushed the Lord of the 180th floor, the Shadow Viper. The protagonist pumped his body full of Yggdrasil's magic, then drove it straight through the blade into the enemy's body right on impact, and Norn swears he's gotten way better at controlling it. The girl practically leaps into the main character's face and tells him, wide-eyed, that he's come a long way since the day he started training 3 years ago. The protagonist says he doesn't even want to remember that nightmare, and Norn just grins while saying, "Yeah, he got killed by a tiny monster again and again. He remembers the rabbit, tiny in size, yeah, but absolutely an S-rank monster, an arc rabbit, and he's sure that if that secret treasure hadn't kicked in, he would have been dead before he ever got the chance to train properly. He got stronger because Yggdrasil's magic let him heal without limits. And with that semi-immortal body, he kept pushing his limits, testing, failing, learning, until his control became razor-sharp. And that's why his healing got way stronger. Every time he flipped his magic circuit, he could mend the damage and bring his missing eye back, just like that, and Norn even admits that after all his training under her, she thought he'd need 100 years to reach that height. Turns out it only took him 3, and the girl wastes no time telling the guy, "You're the monster too." The main character shoots back, "No, my training's just that good." He thanks the girl and she tells him, "Stop acting so modest." Out of nowhere, a voice snaps in and tells him, no, he's still weak, not strong at all, and the shock hits him hard. The main character whips his head around in pure shock, but it's like he can't even see who's there, no one registers at all. The girl asks, "What happened?" Again, he looks pale and worried like something's hunting his mind. "Did I see another illusion?" He blurts out, and this time he just can't deny it. Ever since he arrived, he can't shake it. Sometimes, right out of the blue, he spots a tiny version of himself. Ray's like, "According to Norn, this is happening because I'm tied to Yggdrasil. That tree of life doesn't just grow life, it builds up and calls it in. And now it feels like it's reaching for his life next." Every time death drags him to the edge, the main character somehow surges back, and it all starts with him staring down his own life like it's the only thing he can't escape. Norn can't say for certain, but she suspects the magical energy he's getting might carry the thoughts of the dead, stacked up inside Yggdrasil. The girl begs the protagonist to stop them from swallowing him whole, and he finally gets it. They drill hand-to-hand combat like it's life or death. Then Norn leans in and tells Ray right to his face that he's seriously cute. And when Ray asks if he ever misses the outside world, the kid grins and says he doesn't. Then he swings in with a kick, but she jukes aside and rockets upward. He stares up after her and blurts, "Time flies, it's already been 3 years since we met." 3 years vanished in the blink of an eye, maybe because Norn's training had him fighting for survival. And time felt frozen, but now it was screaming forward at full speed because that girl just wiped out SSS rank monsters with 0 effort. The protagonist has teetered on death again and again, but this time he finally forged the strength to stay alive. And now Ray grabs the opening and is about to strike that girl right now. But he glances at her, and before he can react, the girl smacks him and snaps, telling him not to get distracted in the middle of the fight. The impact hurls the protagonist onto the ground while Norn thuds down beside him. Clutching his battered jaw, the protagonist glares at Norn, who demands to know what he's doing. The girl stands right in front of him and says she thought he'd grown up, but nope. He's still a naive kid, and the moment it hits, he's convinced any man would turn away. Night crashes in and the main character sprawls on the grass beside Norn, staring up at the sky, because Norn gasps, "The stars tonight are unbelievably sharp and clear." The guy demands to know if she's always been alone, and she snaps back, "Why ask that? Hardly anyone dares to step into the dungeon, and normal people can't possibly carry them that far." The protagonist tells the girl she's right, because the Shadow Viper is so much stronger than every monster outside the dungeon that he gets wiped out again and again, no matter how much power he throws at her. And when you meet an SSS rank monster for the first time, 9 times out of 10 you don't make it out alive. Ray leans in and asks Norn if she's ever dreamed of escaping. She snaps back that she can't leave the dungeon at all, and Ray presses, "So you truly can't leave?" Ray thought she'd bolted from here long ago. She was strong enough to leave whenever she wanted, but Norn finally admitted the truth. She actually likes this quiet place, it's comfortable, and that's the only reason she's staying. She stares at him and he blurts that he gets it. Then the girl sinks back into her seat, flashes a grin, and declares she still dreams of seeing the world beyond the dungeon. She fires the question at him, "Is there anything worth getting out for?" And the main character spirals as he realizes time may have run out, and everything unfinished is still hanging over him. He wasn't connected to Genki anymore, and as Donghua floated through his head, he even wondered if he should crawl back once he got stronger. But none of that ever hit him. All that stuck around was a thin, bitter heat of hatred and pure irritation. He can't stop wondering what else he even has left, and why he ever wanted to die in the first place. Norn swivels toward the guy and asks if he's got anyone, if there's someone he'd give anything to meet beyond the dungeon. The main character's mind races with something, and then, boom, he suddenly flashes back to a girl and total shock hits him out of nowhere. He whirls toward Norn and she's caught off guard. Then he insists that when you really think about it, there's still one thing hanging in the air and he's going to get out. Ninamoa, red-haired with lidded eyes and a tiny mole near her gaze, was her name, and before she ever joined Gyukino Donghua, she and Ray were inseparable, always stuck together inside the serpent merchant's mansion. Because they were basically the same age, he nicknamed her Nene, and back then he was always right there by her side. The protagonist got beaten to a pulp, and every time the traders lashed out, he swore she stepped in like an older sister just to take out everyone's stress. In those moments, she always stepped in front of him, arms wide, shielding him like nothing could touch him. And when the main character, tears streaming down his face, asked if she was okay, her reply never changed. With a bright grin on her face, the girl promised him, "If trouble ever comes for that window, I'll protect you, no matter what." She begs him to rescue her from the chaos, because with a servant's future doomed to be sold, he never even dared to imagine he could save her. She thought she finally got it, and that's why her kindness hit him so hard, but whether he was still a servant or had risen into an adventurer, that promise still never came true. Now the protagonist finally gets the shot to keep the promise he made back then. Ray decides to go meet her. If trouble is waiting, he'll charge in and save her, because now he actually has the power to do it, and maybe Yggdrasil's magic will let him crush whatever problem she's facing. 5 long months crawl by, and now he and Norn finally push toward the exit of Yggdrasil's labyrinth. He strides toward Nanamoa, then the protagonist protagonist freezes in his robe, eyes locked straight ahead. The girl fires off, "What's wrong?" And he can't even explain. This place just feels scarily familiar, so he turns to Norn and asks, "What is florid?" The girl swears 125 is the goal, but the main character shuts her down. He's still nowhere near even the middle, all thanks to the magic of Yggdrasil. While his body feels fine, his brain is already drained to the bone. Norn snaps that she already warned them it'll take at least 2 years to break out. For the next 5 months, they kept marching toward the exit with 0 pauses, but damn near every fight along the road was handled by that one guy. Norn says this counts as training too, but she never steps into the fights. She just sits back and laughs while he throws everything he's got at the enemy, and only when he's truly in danger does she swoop in and save him. Norn says it was around the 160th floor, and it's downright hilarious seeing him coated in monster drool from head to toe. Ray just mutters that she should have saved him instead of laughing every single time. The girl tells him, "If you keep saving him all the time, this won't even count as training anymore, and I might start laughing when I see how much stronger you've become." She says the next part was totally hilarious. He was frantically washing his clothes and pants that were drenched in saliva, then the second she caught him, he spiraled into embarrassment, and she just can't figure out why he got so flustered. The protagonist tries to speak up to Norn, but she whips her gaze forward and blurts out that there's a bag right there. He might find clothes there, because there's no way he'd want to step out looking like a mess of saliva and blood, and if that blood stained his hair, he'd be stuck waiting for it to grow back. But at least the clothes were something he could fix. The girl grips a bag and swears, "That's my bag," and the stunned protagonist can barely believe it, whispering, "Wow, this is insane luck." He tells everyone this is why the place felt familiar to him, the exact same spot he'd been in before the attack, and then, out of nowhere, someone screams. She grips a jar in her hands and snaps at the main character, telling him he didn't even bother to pack a change of clothes. And then she says this place has nothing here that'll help him at all, because he totally underestimated the Yggdrasil labyrinth. With a look of pure dissatisfaction, the main character mutters that he doesn't even know what to say. Then, out of nowhere, he spots someone and freezes in shock. Ray spots it and chills hit him because this isn't the first time they've crossed paths with that monster. Norn turns to the guy and demands, "Do you know what this is?" And the guy answers with a tight nod, clenching his fist so hard it looks like he's bracing for a past he can't forget. Then the protagonist yanks out his weapon and charges straight at the monster. He knows words won't reach him, but he still shouts that he's not the person he used to be anymore. He nicks the turtle and lands, only to realize the wound isn't deep at all, and with the Shadow Viper's speed and power, it immediately wrecks his plans, yet this monster is even stronger. But the truth hits him hard. He's only really strong in the shell he hides behind. The protagonist clenches the turtle with all his strength, takes a deep breath and lifts it off the ground with his bare hands. With one crushing knock, the protagonist drops the monster to the ground, and the turtle sprawls there as he keeps his weapon up and ready in front of him. In the next instant, the monster's head gets chopped clean off and the guy lets out a deep sigh, then asks Norn how she pulled it off, only for her to go utterly silent, leaving him staring at the girl, completely baffled. The girl tells him, "When you're out, go make friends." He snaps, "Why are you even saying this?" She can't find the words, but she warns him anyway. He's reckless, and she just wants him surrounded by reliable people. He doesn't fully get it, but he nods and agrees anyway, and even though he doubts he'll ever make friends, the girl gives him a bright, hopeful gesture and tells him he can. He just has to try. Ray says it's easy, and the girl bursts out laughing, then hits him with the truth, "You can't live all by yourself." He shoots the girl a puzzled look and she tells Ray, "You've got a long life coming, so you need friends because if I'm ever gone, you'll still have someone to laugh with." The protagonist snaps at the girl to stop saying things like that and to stop stirring up trouble, then they fall into a tense silence, staring each other down. Then the main character clamps his hand tight, swears he gets it all and will try, while the girl beams, calling him a good boy. He tells her she's acting like a kid around him again, and for Norn that's exactly true, so she beams, waves her hands in the air and bursts into happy laughter. The girl flashes a smile and declares it's time to move on. Then she heads off and calls out for the guy to follow her. He's dead set on this. If he can truly make friends, he'll drag them straight back to Norn, and oh, wouldn't it be amazing to introduce her to Nanamola too? He'll come back here the moment he's done with everything outside. A bird streaks through the sky, and the moment the main character in Nornland leaps off it, they land on a treasure, gorgeous crystals shining everywhere. The girl climbs up onto a tree while Ray waits below, and then, snap! The branch can't take her weight, breaks, and she tumbles straight down. Then the girl snaps in fury at the guy for showing up in front of him in that teasing, revealing pose, and he bolts from her. Then, after a while, they're back together, a fire crackling between them, sitting close and smiling like nothing happened. After a while, Norn and Ray burst into a shining opening, and the girl points ahead and shouts, "This is it, there's the exit." The main character says, "This is it, we finally made it," and the girl nods, agreeing with him. The girl snaps that her job here is done, and that's weird coming from someone with an immortal body, so he better watch himself out there. The guy goes quiet, she leans in and presses, "What's wrong?" and then basically tells him to just leave already. The main character leans in and demands she tell him whether it's real, that she can't go with him. The girl snaps that he already knew it all, because he's a white magician. This body was carved from the dungeon's aura, while her real body has been dead for ages. So yeah, she's basically a living burst of magical energy, and if she steps outside, her body will break apart, fade out, and vanish. That's where their roads split, and the protagonist shoots out a sincere apology because she never wanted to make her blurt out words like that. The girl begs him not to be sad, and that makes her feel like some kind of villain. He instantly apologizes, swears he won't do it again, and Norn bursts into laughter like, "Nope, it's different." She even begs him, "Come visit me now and then," because if he doesn't, she'll start feeling painfully alone. He's stunned by it, makes a bold promise right then, he won't let her feel alone, because he genuinely loves this place and he's coming back here for sure. The girl leans in and says, "That's the deal, she'll wait, even if I bring a girl, she won't mind." The guy's stunned because earlier he swore that if he ever managed to make friends, he'd introduce them to her for sure. Norn tells him, "Yeah, you want to meet your girlfriend, but don't forget to live a little," and he swears he'll try. Then the main character nods, says goodbye, and turns to walk away. The girl nods with a bright smile, telling the guy to look after himself, and then he steps out into the light, raising his hand to wave at her. For 3 years he called the lowest floor home, then he spent 2 more years up on the top, so it's been 5 years since he left, and now he's wondering, has the world flipped upside down, or is everything still the same? The more he thinks, the more dread starts to gnaw at him. But still, he's buzzing with anticipation, ready to step outside. So he does, and then he spots a whole town sitting out in the distance. He snaps his head up, tears blazing in his eyes, and blurts out that this is the real sky, like his whole body can finally breathe free at last. Then a strange sound cuts in. He suddenly watches the exit vanish inches from his face, and he realizes he can't slip back in. He'll have to track down the original way out. The main character fires off a mental thank you to Norn, slaps his own cheeks to snap out of it, and immediately thinks, first order of business, get to a village or city, trade what he has for money, and yeah, he needs new clothes like ASAP. Then Ray catches a strange smell and shoots himself a question, is it me? But the truth hits fast, it's not. The protagonist realizes it's blood and monsters on the air, and then a blood-soaked man suddenly lunges in and gets cut in half. The protagonist stares in horror ahead, and there's a dragon. That dragon, well, something like it, stares back and says the order was simple. Eat as many people as you can. One of the demon lord's 4 deadly demon commanders got a brutal order. Seize the capital and tell every demon to hunt down and devour every single person. No mercy, no weak, because only the strong survive. Every demon under his command sprang into action, arming themselves to storm the capital. Raid after raid, demons come crashing in, slashing through travelers, hunting merchants, and robbing them blind before they can even blink. And then they slaughtered them, swallowed every last bite again and again, but it still never filled the hunger. They were still short on supplies, stuck unable to seize the capital and prove to everyone that the demons ruled over them, so they had to slaughter, eat again, and push even harder. A cart rattled down the street while a demon lurked in the trees, snarling that they were coming. Then it promised he'd rob and kill them. Right behind that cart, wolf-like monsters suddenly surged into view. Then the demon grins and says he's going to eat them, like it's hilarious. Then, just a couple minutes later, the cart is smashed to pieces and people and horses are left dead in the wreckage. A fair-haired fighter stood there, gripping his sword, panting like crazy, because at that point his doubts were completely gone. With one brown horn and a monstrous battle axe, he actually turned out to be a V-ranked human hunter, going full vegan. Vegan shoots out a grin, and people around town start talking like he's suddenly a total celebrity. But hey, that's exactly what you'd expect from Drave's creations. Everything in here screams top-tier quality, backed by serious magic. Right then, Vegan lunges in and smashes the cart the girl was on, sending it crashing down as she screams in pure shock. The girl sat there with her wrists locked in handcuffs, shaking with terror, and Vegan said the woman wasn't some monster either. But here's the twist: Vegan never guessed there'd be only 3 carts, and the 2 he sees aren't servants at all. They're holy knights standing there with a sword-wielding guy and his dead partner. Vegan claims it finally makes sense. After all those attacks, they've hired security, then the guy bolts and Vegan chases after him, shouting, "So you're running away." He freezes in horror when the truth hits. He has no shot at beating it because this monster slices through armor with a single savage strike. Vegan lunges into the swing of the axe and snarls at the guy, asking if he's an official elite unit the king himself recognizes. Then the guy hesitates, already thinking about running to his superiors. Vegan leans in and asks if he's really sure he wants to turn his back on him. Then, the very next second, Vegan is already launching a strike. Vegan slams the guy so hard he crumples to the ground, knocked out cold, and when Vegan finally sees the truth, he's dead. Blood pours from his weapon. The monster sneers that the holy knights are just for show, nothing but weak, dull fools, then whips around and demands, "So who else thinks so?" The girl sobs through her tears and the Vegan sneers that men taste awful. So she tosses them to the demonic beasts like it's no big deal. He cups her cheek in his hand and leans in, telling her she looks impossibly appetizing just like that. Vegan claims she's got a super cute face and gorgeous eyes, then says he'll take her like a pet and eat her, so the girl screams for help. The monster leans in and tells the girl that the fear twisting her face is downright adorable. Vegan lifts her chin again and tells the girl, "Trust me, this will be fun," even as she makes it clear she'll live every day terrified that she's next to get killed. And he'll spin through her every whim non-stop, round the clock, every single time. Each of them was in on it, even if she never knew. They dropped to their knees and begged him to spare them, and once he'd taken one look, they really did everything. Vegan says people are fascinating, so desperate to survive that they'll do anything, no matter what. Then he talks about a man getting betrayed, spiraling into despair. So he clamps his grip and smashes the girl's face. The monster grins, saying he can't get enough of it, then the girl pleads for him to spare her. Vegan bursts into laughter, promising he'll keep her safe, right up until he's the one begging to kill her. Suddenly, the main character shows up in torn clothes, grins at the world, and wishes everyone a good day. The main character clutches his head, blurts out an apology for the interruption, and then says he's completely lost. He even wondered if she could steer him to the nearest village, so he shot her the question, could she do it? Vegan shut him down fast, "It's impossible." The guy swallowed that answer, then started piecing it together, freaking out about who Vegan really was and how the heck she'd gotten close to him in the first place. Even in rags, he can't be fooled. Monster blood reeks off him so violently that the truth behind who he really is feels impossible to ignore. The girl screams at the protagonist to stay back. He's gotta bolt right now because if he doesn't, she'll kill him. He keeps pushing her, asking if he's actually going to flee, and she snaps back that he's hunting her, so she tells him to run for his life. The protagonist says he gets it, and the monster realizes this guy is acting distant. But it doesn't know why he's drenched in blood, and still, it can't walk away with witnesses still here. Then the monster spares him for a second, only to sneak up from behind, hack off both his legs, keep him alive, and make that woman watch as she saws apart the remains right in front of her. He can't stop imagining the look on her face when the one she swore she'd save gets murdered right in front of her. Then he licks his lips, practically buzzing with excitement just thinking about it. The monster snarls that he'll release the guy, then keeps the woman. He turns to the guy and demands, "So are you going to save her or bolt?" Vegan shoots him a silent look, daring him to show a face twisted by the pain of choice, and the protagonist actually says yes. So Vegan's stunned, wondering if he'll just walk away from her after all. Instead of backing off, the monster leans into her pain, savoring every bit of her suffering, and then it charges, ready to strike him. The girl screams at the guy, "You're behind me, watch out!" But the monster snarls back, too late. Right as the protagonist turns to leave, Vegan suddenly slices him apart into several pieces from behind. The girl shrieks in pure horror, tears streaking down as she desperately denies it. Then the full cruelty hits her and she collapses into sobs. The monster locks eyes with the girl and grins with satisfaction. This is exactly the reaction he was craving, and he can't get enough of it. Then he steps up to the protagonist's body, staring into his battered face like it's the most terrifying thing he's ever seen, pain twisting every line. Then, without warning, Vegan's head gets sliced clean off and it vanishes off his shoulders in an instant. Horror twists his face as the world spins in his mind. He's begging you not to say the man just cut off his head because he's using healing. He slams his head back into place, grabs his skull like it's falling apart, and stares in disbelief at what just happened. Then the main character jumps in, asking, "So, how'd that feel? Did it hurt?" In total shock, he blurts out the real problem. "Wait, you cut off your legs." But the main character just stands there while the monster snaps, "Why are you in my spot?" And he's convinced, "I already cut you off for him, so what did you do to me?" The protagonist grins and blurts, "Yeah, knife to the neck, cut it clean off, then I stitched my head back on with healing, that's it." Vegan's jaw drops at the thought of healing. There's no way, because he's never even heard of healing magic that strong, and even if it did exist, nobody would just call it healing. It has to be an illusion. Something out there grips him, he can't even explain it, yet he knows one thing for sure. This guy is pure danger, so he has to sprint now or he'll be the one who gets killed. The protagonist fires a question at the monster, "What are you?" But the thing's instincts shriek that he's deadly, and yet his legs freeze in panic. He has to run. He remembers the command clear as day, devour every last person, no exceptions, and if they're weak, they're just not part of it because demons don't stay fragile, they're built to be strong. The monster's terrified. If he slips out, those 4 deadly demons will hunt him down and kill him. Vegan snaps and decides he's going to kill the guy, barking that he better not mock him again. Then he swings his weapon and the protagonist just stands there and takes it. The monster roars that he's a legendary people hunter. Then this poor kid tries to kill him and can't land a single hit. The monster brags that he wrecked 3 trees, slaughtered holy knights from the capital, crowned himself the supreme demon. And then he blurts vegan like it's the final boss taunt. Then the main character throws a devastating strike and the monster's hand whips sideways hard. The main character leans in and demands, "So now you get it, you're weaker than me." Suddenly, the monster grabs onto the severed limb and the protagonist chooses to forgive, because this time there won't be any second chance. The demon Vegan cackles and revels in the chaos like it's a feast, while our main character swears he's the hunter, certain the weak are just prey, until reality flips and that confidence shatters. Ray slams a threat down. If he spots the demon's face again next time, the demon won't get to breathe. He'll leave him no chance to live, and the white mage finally sees the truth. He's the weak link and he's the one being hunted. After the demon's attack, the hero closes in on the girl, drops down beside her and scans her like he's afraid the worst is coming. He wants to make sure she's really okay. Ray tries to speak, but all that comes out is a shaky, awkward The girl snaps the silence first. She introduces herself as Liana. Then, voice trembling with doubt, she admits she's a servant and she honestly thanks the hero for saving her. The girl's words slam the white mage with pure shock. Then Leona yanks his leg out of nowhere and demands he forget every last thing she just said, leaving him trembling at the sudden touch. The boy blurts out her name in pure confusion and Liana freezes, staring at his legs like she can't trust what she's seeing. The wounds are gone, fully healed like they never happened, and she can't help but demand, "Were your legs really cut off, or is this some kind of miracle?" Ray can't stop wondering, does she really care? Does she ever think about anyone else when she's barely hanging on? Then the hero makes up his mind and decides to level with her. He's a white mage and he can heal. The girl burst into a scream of pure amazement, then blurted her thoughts out loud. He hadn't just gotten help. He'd used healing to cure his own legs and literally brought back what everyone said was gone. Liana lifted her hand to her chin, brow furrowed, and stared like the answer should have been obvious. She couldn't believe she'd gone her whole life without ever hearing about such an incredible white mage. Meanwhile, Ray looked fed up, then it hit him hard. After 5 straight years of training, his reflexes had sharpened so deeply, and now that he finally clocked it, he understood his healing wasn't normal at all. The hero tried to dodge the topic, then fired off a question to Liana: what are her plans and what's she doing next? She looked down and admitted with soft sadness that she still didn't know what to do yet, and that shaky uncertainty tugged at the hero's heart. The white magician opened his mouth, but no words could escape to match the storm of emotion he felt. A snapshot from long ago slams into his mind, Leonor's face, and suddenly he's ripped back to those vanished days. Ray still remembers that day back when he was weak and powerless. A girl stepped right in front of him with her arms out, shielding him, and somehow she was always there, always backing him up. Liana shoots the hero a worried look, demanding to know if he's really okay, then Ray snaps to the truth. He can't just abandon a 12-year-old girl to fate with no plan and no place to go. Moa, the girl from his past, suddenly crashed back into his thoughts, and the hero can't stop wondering how everything would have turned out if she were here right now. Ray flashes a grin and tells the girl straight up that he's finally hunting for his own place in the world, then he's heading for the imperial capital. Liana freezes at his words, but she doesn't interrupt. She just listens, eyes bright with interest. The white magician shoots his hand out toward the girl, inviting her closer with a bold, commanding gesture. He invites her to tag along, promising that in the capital she'll probably score plenty of chances, and maybe even find something amazing, and Leona stares at him with wide, shocked eyes, while Ray can't stop thinking about Moa again. He's dead set on becoming like her, someone who helps people. The young man stays cool and simply asks Liana if she thinks it's a good idea. Ray lights up, convinced that this means it's finally real, that he can do anything now. He finally realizes he and Moa won't cross paths again for a while, and then, out in that eerie mystery zone, he spots someone stalking through the shadows. The sounds creep in and the whole place screams creepy laboratory. Exhausted and spent, someone crumples on the floor, while a mysterious man in black looms before him and a terrified girl trembles in fear. With his final breath, the demon topples forward headfirst, because yet again he failed. The mysterious man snaps that this method won't let him lock the result in, but he's not even bothered. He's got more than enough materials to keep going. That girl isn't some kid anymore, she's the grown-up Moa, and then his words hit. Now it was her turn. After the battle rages through, 2 swords are hammered into the earth, stuck there like trophies of war. Ray folds his arms, lets out a sharp sigh, mutters okay, and locks in his decision. The magician snaps to his feet, locks eyes with the girl, and urges her to run wild, go as far as she can before night falls. Now the hero's got a brand new outfit, perfect for stepping into the capital. But his stomach twists as he snatches it from the carriage without permission, even though he has no choice at all, because there's no way he can march into the imperial city in rags. That's completely unacceptable. So he shoves the mineral he dug up in the dungeon over as payment, hoping it's not too little. Suddenly, the white mage jolted. Liana's voice cut through the air, and she spoke directly to him, calling out Ray by name. Ray's eyes widened at her sudden address. She clearly wanted to pick up right where their last conversation left off. Liana blushes hard, snaps out an apology, and admits she can't follow him. The hero frowns, demanding why, because he absolutely never saw that answer coming. The girl hugs the cloak to her chest and blurts out her plan. She insists Vegan could pop back up if they keep walking together. Ray blurts in shock, "Vegan, really?" And he can't believe it's the same demon from last time, can he? The hero remembers that brutal battle. He didn't kill the demon, but he planted a terror so deep that the demon won't dare raise a hand and attack anyone for a long while. The magician leaned back, thought for a second, then grinned and said that even if Vegan popped up again, he'd be a total breeze to handle. Leona blurts out a startled little gasp, and when Ray snaps back to reality, he panics and blurts, "Nothing," so she won't even chase the thought. He tells her not to worry about him because he'll be fine either way. The magician then declares she's free now, she can live like any regular person, but Liana refuses to buy it. She tells him the guy from her temporary contract is dead, but then Ray spots something chilling. He stares at the girl's wrist and realizes there's a strange mark there, and the surprise hits hard. Liana tells them straight up, as long as that evidence still exists, she'll stay trapped forever. She'll never be free, never truly independent. The hero sits there thinking, and then it clicks. Magic can siphon a chunk of your mana, stitch it to someone else, and suddenly they can't ignore orders anymore, basically, a curse dressed up as control. Ray presses his hand with the other, and regret hits him hard for not thinking of it sooner. The girl grips her cape to her chest and, voice shaking with pain, warns that a man with no known origin won't find a buyer. No one will want to take him because they can't control him, and if he messes up, they'll be blamed for it. So without an owner, his fate is sealed into something truly hopeless. He's got one brutal path ahead: become demon and beast prey, sell his own body, or just end his life. The hero can't forget the instant Liana screamed, "Run!" begging him to save himself before it was too late. He realizes that even when her life was on the line, her first thought was saving him, and the mage figures out why she won't go with him. She's terrified of dragging him into even worse danger. Ray figured that if Nanamoa were here, she wouldn't fold so easily. Give her a chance to save and protect others and she'd jump in without hesitation, and that's exactly what he can do for Leona right now. The hero swivels toward the girl and in a soft voice asks if she's okay with it. Leona's eyes widen in shock as she waits for his answer. Ray grins and keeps pushing, asking if she's ready to sign a contract with him. Leona's eyes went huge with shock. She fired back that her old master was already dead, so there was no way they could run the official process, and if anyone found out, Ray was going to get punished. Then the white magician shoots his hand toward her, claiming he knows it all, and tells her, "Don't worry, you're safe." Ray channels his magic, then the exact same mark Liana has blooms onto his hand. The girl's eyes go wide as she stares in disbelief, then blurts out with trembling suspicion, "Is this a sign I'm meant to submit?" The magician presses his hand to it, grimaces, and admits he can't bear looking at it. Then he seals it shut with medicine. Bandages wrap his arm and he snaps that once he rips them off, it's all back to square one, processed again, no shortcuts. Liana is frozen in shock, still unable to think straight. And the worst part, Ray isn't free either. He wraps up his injured hand and admits he'd been left behind at some point, and the magician quickly tells the girl, "Don't stress, everything's okay." Liana tries to speak, but the words choke in her throat, and right then the hero spots something off. He lunges in front of the terrified girl and throws his body over her, blasting the monster's surprise attack out of the way. The heroes huddle by the tree, and from deep in the forest, footsteps and danger are closing in. Ray locked eyes with the monster sprawled on the ground, then saw the horde closing in fast because this wasn't even the start. 5 new wolf-like monsters surge forward, growling like thunder and snapping their teeth at you. The white mage takes one look, makes a sharp guess, and snaps that vegan brought them. Then his eyes widen because the monsters keep pouring in, way more than he expected. The monsters unleash a gut-deep growl, charging in right as the air turns electric and thick with danger. Ray snaps into a fighting stance and orders Leona to hang back behind him. Monsters thunder toward them, and Ray hard focuses his mana into his leg. He lets it all rip in one brutal moment. Boom! A thunderous explosion blasts open the earth and chunks of rock rocket out from underneath. A bunch of monsters got wiped out when the shockwave slammed into them. The hero leaps onto a rock, stares down the last enemies, and declares with ice-cold resolve that they're not getting past him. Ray launched off the rock and slammed into the monsters, while Liana cowered behind the stones, watching the magician like her life depended on it. Liana's jaw dropped. This white magician didn't feel like any ordinary healer, and the thought kept spinning in her head. She whips her head around and spots a sword sitting right there within reach. With his sword still raised, the hero stares down the fallen enemy, yet the battlefield is still packed with monsters. One of them charges Ray from behind, and he decides to plant fear in their hearts like he did with Vegan. He whips around, ready to strike, but then something shocks him out of nowhere. Liana didn't hesitate, she slammed into the monster at the last second, and that single strike saved the magician. Ray's frozen, couldn't get a single word out, while Liana pushes up from her seat, shocked that she moved at all. Breath ragged, she blurts that she did it, then clamps down on her sword like it's about to draw blood. Sweat beads on her face, and after a quick breath, she locks eyes with Ray and vows she'll fight right by his side. The magician panicked for her, then sprinted up to the girl, completely lost as he couldn't make sense of what she was saying. Liana plants herself before the monster and tells Ray not to panic. She tells you she was trained to handle weapons, but this is her first real fight and it's hitting her like a storm. The magician stared in disbelief at how she'd been trained, like, Could it be that nowadays subordinates aren't just stuck doing housework or hauling heavy labor but are actually taught combat skills too? Because wow, in the last 5 years everything has flipped. The wolf-like monsters keep snarling and one lunges straight at Liana. She freezes and sucks in a terrified breath. Then a thunderous blast crashes through the air. Ray barrels toward her and scoops her into a tight hug, shielding her from the monster while she fends off its attack. There were just too many of them, so the mage snapped that battling all those opponents would be death for Liana, while the monsters boiled with fury, radiating rage like a storm. The hero stared them down, dead serious, like his presence alone told those monsters they were in trouble. Weird sounds crack the air, the monsters tense up and freeze in place, and you can tell something magical is unfolding right in front of them. A creepy, mystical silhouette crawled into view behind the hero and the girl like the restless spirits of the dead, and the air instantly snapped with dread as the darkness thickened with tension. Sensing that strange, unknown power, the monsters instantly backpedaled. Then they shrieked in terror and bolted, fleeing on pure instinct to save themselves. Ray lets out a shaky sigh of relief. Things are finally calm again, and he tells Lena everything's okay so she can finally drop her guard. But when he clocked the girl's embarrassment and the fear hiding under it, Ray backed off fast, shooting out an apology, and Leona just said softly, "I mean it, I'll tell you everything, don't worry." The magician quickly checks on her, panicked, "Are you hurt?" And she reassures him she's totally fine, then thanks him again for saving her. Right after those words, he drops his head because something's clearly eating at her. Ray clocks it instantly and starts to piece it together. He remembers how that girl fought through her fear, without a single thought for her own life, and how she honestly believes she's just causing him trouble. The hero decided that if he wanted her to stay, he'd have to earn it. So he kicked off a brand new chat about the contract and let something slip that changes everything. Ray rubs the back of his head, caught in an awkward shuffle, and admits he's lost his memories over the last few years. Liana freezes in shock, can't swallow what she's hearing, and blurts, "Are you serious? Are you really telling the truth?" But Ray was straight up lying, claiming he'd been stuck in a dungeon the whole time, saying the real story was too much trouble for the hero and would only mess up the girl. With his arms wide open, the hero shrugs like it's nothing, saying memory loss wipes the whole mess clean, so he remembers nothing of what happened. He figures Liana gets that better than he ever will. Then he turns to the girl and begs her to teach him everything she knows. Ray can't stop thinking about Nanamoa again, because to find her he's going to need more clues. He has to learn what crushed and changed across the world during the last 5 years. With a hand pressed to his chest, the magician begs Liana to share her knowledge, then promises he'll keep protecting her, even willing to pay for it, and Liana's stunned because she can't figure out why he's fighting so hard for her. Ray locks eyes with her and breaks into a smile, then he leans in and says he only needs her, just her, nothing else. Lena stares with wide eyes and asks again, like she can't wrap her head around the idea that anyone would actually need her. The hero flashes a calm, confident smile and answers yes in an instant, and the girl quietly lowers her head, fighting back a flood of overwhelming emotions. Lena fidgets with her fingers and tells Ray that if he hadn't saved her back then, she'd be 6 feet under already. And then she leans in, says she'll sign on the dotted line if that's what he wants. The hero beams and declares the contract is sealed, thanking the girl, then Liana bows back, calling him Lord as gratitude sparks between them. Ray blasts her with magic and slips a disguise over the mark on the girl's hand. Liana sat down by the tree and the magician dropped to his knees and solemnly declared the contract sealed. She beamed, thanked him, and promised she'd obey any of his commands. Then Ray nervously tried to shake his hand, but she mistook it and snapped back, refusing. The hero lays out why they even signed the contract, because it's not some master fantasy and it's got not one but 2 bombshell perks. It gives them a way to pinpoint each other's location, so if she's in trouble or vanishes, Ray can rush in fast. And it lets them trade magical energy, letting the magician pour his aura into Leon to toughen her up and boost her odds of surviving, meaning he can guard her way more easily. The hero extends his hand and Ray jumps in to start a conversation, until the girl cuts him off and insists he call her just Liana. With a sincere smile, the young man asks her to just call him Ray, and he eagerly offers to team up, she grins back and calls him Rei-sama. The white magician snaps her correction right away and she blurts out that she misunderstood, then he tells her not to guess or add anything on her own when she talks to him. Liana freezes, cheeks burning, silent and a little confused. Meanwhile, the forest swallows the last light and Rei calls it, she's stopping right here for the night. The girl protests, insisting she can keep going, but the magician snaps up a tent anyway. He sees the exhaustion in her eyes and warns her, don't push too hard, if you march on like that you'll wreck your legs. Rei can't stop worrying and Leona drops the truth, she heard the night monsters around here are absolutely terrifying. And then she rushes in with an apology, saying they had to cut things short because of her. The system window flashes what went down months ago in the imperial capital, right inside Valent Castle. Loki, the Gung-Kino Dongwa team's leader, leans in and says it's been 5 or 6 years since he was last here, back when this same team got promoted to a rank. Loki trudges down the castle corridor at a slow pace, because only a tiny few get past these doors, commoners never do, unless it's one of those rare special days like when they're invited to receive an award. The leader says nothing, because the moment he steps in, a wave of memories slams into him and overwhelms him all over again. Loki's mind snaps back, someone drops the words, God is a man, and it hits like a thunderclap. The king rules from the throne room as guards stand watch on both sides, while someone kneels in front of him, and the king roars that they'll never let demons pollute the land where the gods dwell. The king wears an eye patch, then barks an order to annihilate the demon lord, because in his mind they're gods, so what they do is just. The king snaps out an order, hero, go seize your destiny. And right in this moment Loki, the team's leader, stands in the crowd behind him, staring with sharp focus. Right now, Loki Vigrador stole a glance away, then dropped his eyes to the floor, because the king was talking about him and his crew Gung-Kino Dongwa. They just smashed through multiple A-rank dungeons and helped the Empire in a big way, and the king was handing over a certificate that made them official S-rank legends. Standing before the throne, kneeling had 3 other team leaders watching too. This round, 4 teams got promoted and the leaders were a wild lineup. A bald, scarred man, a woman with a bandage over her mouth, Loki Vigidor himself, and a dude with a bandage slapped on his face. Everyone stared at Loki with pure envy, because only the Gung-Kino Dongwa team managed to hit S rank. Vigrador grinned smugly, let out a soft chuckle, and soaked in the jealous stares from all his rivals like it was pure victory. Loki bows to the king, then promises with fire in his voice that they'll keep pushing, until they're strong enough to be the Empire's backbone in the fight against the Demon Lord. The king paused, then declared he was counting on them to deliver something legendary, so he waved them on, and all 4 leaders nodded in perfect agreement with their master. With the official award ceremony finally done, team leader Gung-Kino Dongwa practically exhaled as he strode down the hallway, because he'd just reached S rank at last. Loki remembered the grind it took to climb up. To reach S rank, his squad cleared 2 A-rank dungeons and finished 3 missions. Then for a rank they tackled 4 B-rank dungeons and pulled off 5 more missions, and before that they pushed through 8 C-rank dungeons plus 5 extra missions. An exhausting road that tested every last bit of them. But now that Loki's climbed to S rank, the guild's rewards are about to explode. The Empire is stepping up with extra support, and those money troubles, they're finished for good. Lost in his own head, he took one step after another. And then 2 strangers popped up in front of him, shouting his name like they'd been hunting him. A bespectacled girl and an armored man stood face to face with Loki, and the moment this guy just heard the boy hit S rank at only 20 looked at him, he blurted out that he was the real deal. Vidroder thanked him for the kind words and the girl lit up, praising him as truly incredible. She grinned in delight, most teams still can't even clear ranked dungeons. Loki couldn't stop grinning, he found it downright hilarious. He couldn't stop smiling, this feeling was pure fuel. He stared at the 2 of them and thought, once you hit S rank, people don't just notice you, they respect you, they admire you, and that's why being an adventurer is worth every risk. His mouth curled into a smug grin, and the hunger inside his chest for recognition finally got fed. Loki flashed a harmless little smile, spoke with perfect manners, and claimed it was his team's talent that carried everything. The young man kept raving about how lucky he was to have his teammates, insisting he needed to thank them, while in his own head he was convinced that without his leadership they never would have pulled off a thing. Vigrador figured they owed him thanks and the man started to say it, because his team was so strong. Then Loki leaned in and listened like his life depended on it. He pitched the idea that Loki's crew might one day ride alongside the hero's party, whether they're wiping out S-rank dungeons or crashing into the Demon Lord's generals. Suddenly, he slammed a hand onto the boy's shoulder and the boy froze with a jolt, while the man blazed on, insisting Loki's crew might take down the undead horror by themselves, totally fired up. With a sneering laugh, the leader said he'd try to tackle this task one day. Loki bows with an apology, saying his crew is waiting at the gate, and once they give the okay, he wants to step out. The armored guy rubs his head like it's his fault and apologizes back for stalling him. They trade farewells, promising they'll meet again, and Vidrador just watches them vanish down the road. The leader snaps that the old man is still the same snooze fest, and that he's dreaming of something he'll never reach, yet Loki just scoffs, smirking at the talk of victory over the horror of the undead. Vidrador can't shake the horror of the undead in his bones. This Class A+ monster comes in 3 terrifying forms: human, beast, and liquid. Every inch of its body is soaked in poison, and you can't take it down until you smash the core. Loki blasts out that there's no way the 10 strongest holy knights can beat even the weakest human type, let alone the liquid type, because his team won't even survive 5 seconds. Their attacks are totally off the wall and their speed is terrifyingly fast, even with those looks. Each one of them is a walking catastrophe. He was certain that even a hero couldn't handle those troubles by himself. The gate slammed shut with a thunderous bang, and Loki snapped his head around, hunting for his team in seconds. He flinched at the thought of those undead horrors again, because this wasn't some small fry monster, it was a top-tier nightmare only lurking in an SSS-ranked dungeon like Yggdrasil. The leader snorts with a cutting laugh, certain he'll never, ever run into this monster again in his lifetime. Inside A-Rank's dungeon, the Gate of Dream Death *, Loki gets slammed by a colossal monster, so he blows the whistle and calls Himeno ** for help. Gymno grips swords in both hands and whips into position, ready to unleash a full-out attack. She barrels into the fight, shouting that the plan is perfectly on track, and with a sharp, accurate strike, Gymneo nails the monster, then yells for Suglance to come in so they can take it down together. He barrels straight at her and blurts out, "Gymno, so beautiful, just nailed the target." Suglance slams into the monster with raw, earth-shaking force. He bursts out in joyful shouts, convinced he's finally won. Loki snapped at him for that behavior, and the anger hit like lightning. A fang rockets out of the monster's mouth like a bullet straight for its target. He drives into Suglance with a hard, piercing jab to the shoulder. The monster lets out a brutal scream, and the air thickens with pure, crushing tension. A fresh healer crashes into the scene right after the failure, and the black mage fires off a spell, rushing power to the whole team. Loki realizes he messed up a good job. Now he's standing there, face to face with the monster. Vidrador thrusts his hands out and declares he'll smash the monster to pieces using his barrier. Right after the win, Suglance ripped shoulder gets bandaged and treated, while Loki leans in and tries again and again to talk him down. He tells you to stop swinging your sword at the monster like it's nothing, slice its head clean off, or you're wasting your blade, and his rage keeps rising because you've heard this speech 100 times already. The warrior scratched his ear, snapped that the leader was a bore, and smugly acted like he'd won. "Everything's fine," he claimed. Loki's irritation only flared higher. Vidrador paced his thoughts, wondering what the point of any plan was if Suglance wasn't even listening. Then he snapped his gaze to the healer Kanata and asked, "Are you done?" Kanata's hands shake as she panics, begs for forgiveness, and pleads for a little more time. Loki tried to shake his thoughts off, glanced around, and told the crew they'd push forward once Suglance's hand healed, because this road was a mile long and Loki figured fighting about it was just spending his strength for nothing. The whole team huddles up in a rank inside a dungeon called the Dream Deathgate. Vidrador drops the bombshell. 3 years ago, miners stumbled onto the dungeon's entrance by accident. 50 people stormed in hunting treasures and rare ores, then every single one vanished without a trace. The Gung no Dongwa squad got dumped in this place to dig up the truth and wipe the dungeon clean. Right then, Loki's mind raced. What was Vale up to? She leaned over the flowers like she was searching for something. The witch snapped out the word snowdrop, and Vigrador shot back the same question: was she talking about a flower? And she nodded dead on. Fail gently brushes the flowers with his hand and says, "These blooms have two secrets. Most of the time they grow where it's full of snow, and they can also burst open anywhere magic energy runs thick." Loki caught on fast. If flowers are sprouting here, then some brutal monster is lurking in that dungeon. And when he pressed Hymno, she told him she was almost certain. She also said her holy sword's blessing was surging way too hard. She threw her hands up and demanded loud, "Is this really an A-rank dungeon?" Loki stayed shut tight, and Warrior Suglinsta blurted that it didn't make sense. Was there a monster roaming here that was even higher than a rank? Loki couldn't stop thinking about the holy sword's blessing that Hymno holds in his hands. It's a killer skill that briefly cranks up your 5 senses, sharpens your reflexes, and boosts your body. Then it even screams a warning the moment a stronger enemy is lurking nearby. Kanata turns to the leader and blurts out, "So what do we do now?" The girl trembles with fear and begs them to retreat. If the monster really is higher than a rank, they have no chance, but Loki shuts that idea down. He grins and declares, full of fire, that their journey isn't over, they're charging ahead. Suglnst freezes in shock, whips around to Loki and snaps, "Are you out of your mind?" Then Vidradord Sikiet grimaces. His booming, smug way of speaking is driving him crazy. The young man strides forward and sells the team on his promise that they'll be fine, because they've already stormed through dungeons and slaughtered a whole lot of A-rank monsters. Loki adds that Kanata is with them too, an absolute beast of a white mage, then strides up and demands confirmation, and when Kanata clutches her weapon, nervous as hell, she stumbles for a moment before admitting she's just flattered someone would say that. With irritation seeping through every word, the healer snaps that she's only ranked 20th, and that she's just as far from first place as Ray is from the moon. Loki stared at her in shock like he couldn't believe what he'd just heard. Then he blurted his name, totally confused. The leader leans in and asks Kanata if she's talking about the old team member they lost back in Yggdrasil, and the white major nods, confirming that Ray Dean Huel used to be part of Gunki no Dongwa. Loki seethed. Could it be that the useless clown he'd dismissed was actually the first-ranked white mage? And the worst part, he had no idea ranks even existed. Kanata grips her staff tight and admits it. She's been obsessed with Ray's fighting style for ages. The healer keeps insisting Ray barely touched his healing, but somehow the whole team stayed standing. Then the moment things shifted, he snapped into action, sized up every enemy in seconds, and locked onto the perfect move. The leader went tense, replaying her own words about why Ray hadn't been healing much. Suglenst's laughter echoed through the dungeon as he lost control, snapping that Ray was useless, and that he didn't have the magic to do a single thing. He burst into laughter and kept insisting Ray could heal, and would want to, but then he slammed the truth down. He couldn't even cast the simplest spell. Loki smirked to himself, loving how fools can be useful, especially when Suglnste blurts out every thought that Loki's been keeping to himself. Bale stood there in dead silence, refusing to say a single word. Kanata nodded along, quietly accepting everything they said about the White Mater. The healer leans in and admits he's always obsessed over one thing: saving his team without burning through magic. Then he devoured tons of books, studied every detail, and forged his very own fighting style. She's convinced Ray really was a once-in-a-lifetime white mage. No one else even comes close. Loki was seething. He clenched his fists, stunned that he couldn't even figure out what was wrong with her as she kept praising that mage like there was no end to it. Vidroder couldn't figure out what was wrong with this girl. Then Kanata snapped back that nobody matches Ray when it comes to healing speed, because her recovery is in a league of its own. She claims it can instantly regrow tissue, and he can even snap all 4 limbs back into place. What Ray was doing wasn't just healing, it was a level no one should have seen, and the news hit like a bomb. Kanata admits that regular white mages can only speed up natural recovery, nothing beyond that, and no stronger magic exists for them. Then Vigrador suddenly pieces it together. Loki kept replaying it in his head. Once raids became the norm, why weren't mortal wounds even a thing anymore? Had they just lucked into S rank? The thought gnawed at him until it felt like torture. Turns out, without Ray, they never would have climbed to that rank at all, and they'd have ended up dead for good. Every teammate went rigid and went quiet, and once the leader finally shook the noise out of his head, he said it hit him, everything was suddenly clear. Loki figured it was only natural, the whole team just went speechless. They'd been sensing something was off about Ray for ages, and now it all clicked loud and clear, so there was no denying it anymore. He relives the mage's final words as he trudges on. One of them warned that you can't heal while you're baiting the enemy, because healing magic demands total focus. The other one snapped in shock when the team said his healing was too slow, because a fracture should mend in an hour. Then he swore it couldn't be true that the previous mage needed a second, and he'd never seen healing magic like that before. She also claimed that white magician's treatment works only if he truly knows human anatomy, because if he can't pinpoint the injury and fix it the right way, he'll just make everything worse. With his final breath, the last one of them gasped that you can't stitch a hand back on. Loki's eyes widened, because those white magicians were brutally skilled. Heat of indignation surged through him. Why wasn't Ray saying a word about it, and why did his body tense up like it knew everything? She snaps at her team to vanish fast, and Vidrador braces, already fearing what she'll do next. Loki crouched behind the wall, staring out and demanding, "Is that monster really that strong?" Imono's nerves rattled as she nodded along. Then she warned him that he was on his own and that he just might be the dungeon master. Even the leader's confidence crumbled. He pressed the question again, demanding if the monster was the dungeon master and why the boss from the lower floor was suddenly on this level, but Gymno had no answer. Her blessing felt like it was yelling, "Run!" straight into her bones. She knew this monster wasn't an A rank at all, it screamed S rank in her gut. Loki Vigrador froze, staring in disbelief. Was this really an S-rank monster? Suglenst's eyes flared, and he snapped to the team that this is what Yggdrasil's monsters look like. Then he demanded, "So what are we doing?" Loki, locked in his decision, forced a calm face on himself. Because 5 long years had raced since they dared Yggdrasil, and back then they were nowhere near this level. They'd grown stronger, forged into an S-rank team, and it didn't happen by luck. The leader snaps with total confidence, "We're taking down this monster." Not like before, this time they'll actually win, and Warrior Suglenst's laughter cuts through the air. He threw his fists up, thrilled by the leader's words and pure confidence, while Gymno's face fell. She couldn't stomach it, but she had no choice left. Fail's face tightened with worry, and she stayed mute, while White Mage Kanata, shaken but unbreakable, swore she would do everything she could. Loki's stare turned ice cold as he ripped into the crowd, demanding they all hit the battlefield. Right then, a humanoid monster burst onto the scene. The Gunkino Dongwa team froze in shock, and straight up recognized the exact image. The undead horror tore into the scene, and that monster greeted the adventurers like it owned the night. Loki went cold with terror, convinced they couldn't possibly beat it, because even a full team of heroes could barely survive what the undead horror was throwing at them. "Those monsters are toying with them," buzzing. "Come on, are you sure you don't want to talk?" Vigrador snapped back to his senses, and relief hit. This monster wasn't a beast at all, it was one of the humankind, and they just needed a little more. Gunkino Dongwa can't be weaker than the hero's team, so everyone sprinted straight at the monster. Meanwhile, deep in the dark forest, the full moon blazed overhead like a cold spotlight. Ray strolled down the path, then, out of nowhere, he snapped to attention when he heard something. The magician snaps, insisting he never misread it. He could spot who it was by its presence and its stench, and on top of that, it was the worst kind of all 3. It was a liquid-like monster standing right in front of him and beckoning him to play, so Ray snapped into a fighting stance and warned, "That's the horror of the undead." Roughly 2 years ago, right before everything went down, the Fail Black Mage events kicked off. She stands before the brutal SSS rank monstrosity, the Yggdrasil labyrinth, heart heavy with that failed Ray memory still haunting her. The witch never forgot how Ray handed her a butterfly-shaped hair clip, convinced it'd suit her perfectly, so when Fail saw it she blurted out, shocked, "Wait, why would he give you something like that?" With an innocent smile glued to his face, the magician declares, "Today's your birthday, huh?" Then he adds with total sincerity that he's been dying to thank her for ages, with a gift. The black magician shot back, baffled, saying she'd never done that for him, but he wouldn't let it go, swearing she always backed him up in fights and even handled the household chores. Ray keeps insisting, begging her to take the gift. Then, without a word, she finally agrees, quietly going along. She grabs the pin in her hand, thanks him for it, and promises she'll take care of it. Then Ray flashes a smile and brushes it off, saying it's nothing big. She was sure he'd been wrong, and deep down, she knew she was the weak one, so she stepped in only as far as her strength would let her. Fail always knew Ray was the spark at the heart of the crew, the one who pushed the hardest and backed the whole team without making noise, and she kept telling Loki that over and over, but he just never took her seriously. In the Black Mage's memories, Hymno didn't buy the hype. She swore this guy wasn't the perfect support at all. She said Ray was good for nothing but hunting info and acting as a decoy, and Loki, their leader, backed her up. Since he's in their group, he'd better push harder than everyone else. Vigrador pushed on and he laid it out cold. Ray was the weakest white mage of all, not even skilled enough to pull off symbol healing, so Loki dismissed him instantly as nowhere near strong enough. Suglin's Titre hit the scene and he panicked, because he knew he'd have to make up for how useless he'd been. After all, he's on the Gung Kino Dongla team, so he's got no choice but to give everything he's got, even harder than before. Loki warned that if he didn't grind himself to the edge of exhaustion, he'd be nothing but dead weight. Fail finally understood her words were worthless. No matter what she said, they refused to take her seriously. Then it hit her, silence crashed in, and before she could breathe, some girl was yelling at her, yanking her straight back to reality. She was here again. Fail blinked in shock when the blonde girl appeared, because the girl said she'd seen her just the last time. This girl ended up being Norn herself. She sat right by the labyrinth entrance, grinning at Fella, saying she'd been here again and again, and then she leaned in and asked, "So you're really going to march into that dungeon?" The witch trembles and whispers, "Who are you, girl?" Norn scratched her head, flashed a friendly smile, and introduced herself like, "Yeah, this dungeon, I treat it like my own garden." The girl strides past the witch and demands her name. Then, out of nowhere, Fail feels a jolt in his gut. She was terrified, frozen in place, unable to move. Magic, did she really just feel it? Norn snapped that ignoring her was rude, then spun toward her and warned her not to even think about stepping into the dungeon at her current level, because she'd drop dead instantly. Fail gritted his teeth and fought off the force while Norn blinked in shock, because she managed to lift it after all, and she even admits she knows the witch's magic way too well. She's hooked because Fail already vanished into this dungeon years ago, so when the black mage stays tight-lipped, Norn leans in and tells her she should have realized just how deadly Yggdrasil is, and then the witch finally admits the truth. She needs to be here. Failed's desperation hits a breaking point as she screams that Ray has to be found, and the girl stays cool, asking if she means the white-haired white mage. The witch froze at the girl's words. Norn leaned in and asked if she's Ray's friend, and Fail hesitated before admitting with a shaky breath that maybe she isn't anymore. Tears streamed down her face as the black mage confessed she wasn't sure he still saw her as his friend, and Norn just couldn't make sense of it. She insists she came here with her life on the line just to find Ray, and yeah, she's absolutely his friend. The witch gripped her staff and snarled that even if she paid with her own life, Ray wouldn't come back. Norn froze, then snapped that she'd better not assume he was truly gone. Fail's eyes blew wide with shock again, and the girl just drops the bomb that Ray is alive, leaving Fail stunned that she never knew. Hope crackles in his voice as he blurts, "Wait, is that really true? How is that even possible?" Norn swore it was the truth. Ray was okay, and he himself had promised he'd endure that dungeon, and the relief hit like a weight falling off her shoulders. She says the witch doesn't have to come here anymore because S-rank monsters sometimes burst in. With a rush of relief, Fail nods and says she gets it. Fail is sobbing, and for once, those tears aren't from despair. She's just thrilled to learn Ray is alive. Her staff clatters to the ground and she bursts into sobs, thanking God for the miracle. Norn blurts it out like it's destiny. If he's got a devoted friend who's been worrying herself sick, then he's not alone. He's got a place waiting for him to come home. Reiji snapped back to her senses, grabbed her staff, and froze at the labyrinth entrance. Norn's backpack sat right beside her. The girl shot the witch a question. "So you're saying Norn leaves all this on the 125th floor near the waterfall for Ray to grab?" She frowned hard. Did she really mean something else handed over personally? The black mage says the backpack is Ray's, but Ray's already got this look like, yeah, sure, he'll never even touch what I cooked up for him. Norn scratched her head in total confusion, but when the moment mattered, she still nodded and agreed to do it. He thanked the girl for helping him. Norn shoved the soul stone into the black mage's hands, grinning and saying it was rare dungeon ore, one you could cash in for a serious fortune. Fail presses again, demanding proof he can take it for real, and Norin finally nods, only to demand something back. She promises that if Ray suddenly decides to come back to their world, she'll make sure he's taken care of, no questions. Then Black Mage Fail nods and squeezes the stone tight. She thanks the girl one more time, whirls toward her, and boom, the ghost of San appears while Norn's eyes go wide and she begs, "Don't come back here again." Fail learned Ray was still alive and it felt like a miracle that saved her. Yet deep down, she knew this didn't erase what she'd done. She clung to the belief that she had to carry that unforgivable sin for the rest of her life. Right now, they're battling an undead nightmare and the thing taunts them to their faces. Boom, explosions crack the air and the whole team is wiped out. Then Suglensd snaps, "Fail me if you've got even a shred of magic left." The witch's face screams this wasn't easy, but she snaps back that her magic isn't finished, only undead Tara hits like lightning, too fast to read, and she can't spot the one perfect opening to unleash a truly devastating spell. Suddenly, a crushing punch landed on her and wiped out the last scraps of her strength right there. She got slammed backward and Warrior Sue glanced at her with terror, like he just realized something horrifying was happening. Then he snaps his gaze upward and the nightmare monster stares back at him, right in the face. Fear slammed into the warrior and he launched himself toward the failure. The monster stared at the adventurers, shocked at how painfully fragile they felt. Two team members, leader and healer, stood there, face to face with undead horror, trembling with terror as they braced for whatever fate was about to strike. Gymno slid up behind her and yelled that she was caught. With one lightning swipe of his hand, the undead horror ripped her arm and leg away in an instant. Himano barely had a second to even process what just happened, because it all exploded so fast. The monster smirked in triumph while Loki tore through the screams, yelling Menno's name. Panic tore through him, he couldn't make sense of any of it. He stared at the defeated team, stunned out of his mind, thinking this can't be happening asterisk, and then he couldn't even believe his own eyes. Kanata snapped his name, yanking him out of that trance, because something was charging toward them from the front, and Loki barely managed to slam up a magical barrier. The monster smashes through him and rips away his arms and legs, and the healer's face turns to pure horror at the sight. Vidrador lets out a pained groan and Kanata leans in fast, searching his face to see how bad it is. The leader shrieks in pure agony, begging, "What are you doing? Heal me faster," as the monster closes in on him. A terrifying undead horror loomed in front of them and Loki was panicking, pleading with her to wait, right now. He makes it crystal clear she can talk, and then he throws himself forward, roaring for mercy with everything he's got. Vidroder starts begging again, hysterical. He can't die now asterisk, not when he's this close. He pleads for mercy, promises he'll do whatever she demands with his comrades, and Kanata is thrown off so hard by his words that she recoils, disgusted and shocked. Gymno can't believe what she's hearing. How in the world did Loki say something like that? The monster breaks into a smug chuckle. The undead horror spits out that Loki's screams make her gag with pure disgust. She can't keep doing this. Then out of nowhere, Loki snatches Kanata. He wraps himself in it like a living shield, and the monster hisses through its own angry complaints over the screams. She fires off the gigaflame, screaming as it erupts. Then the monster whips around in shock and a giant blast of fire and smoke detonates into view. The healer never saw it coming, so Fail clenched her resolve and fought back with everything she had. She snaps at Kanata, screaming that she'll hold off the undead horror for a moment, just long enough for her to grab the chance and heal the rest. With his final breath, Loki stared at her, then his strength gave out and his head dropped. That monster wore a smug grin and stalked straight toward the witch, purring that Kanata's screams would feel like music to her, while the black magician at last chose to give Kanata one shot at escape. Horror attacks couldn't stop it. She believed this was her punishment for betraying her friend back then. Then she couldn't stop imagining Ray's face if he caught them like this. Would he really smile as the traitors finally paid with their lives? She prayed he would. But the monster's tentacles sank into Fail's body and her grip just slipped as her staff fell from her hands. She remembers that day death terrified her more than anything alive, and when it finally hit, she couldn't stop herself and fled Ray. Even she knows the truth, witches like her, tainted with demon blood, are hated by almost everyone. She was sure every single person would snatch their trust away from that witch without a second thought, so she stayed silent, terrified they'd drop her too. The terror of death clawed harder than any urge to save him, and in her gut she knew it made her selfish, all because she was scared to die. So she decided this was her punishment, and she chose to go along with it on her own. Fail's name blared, she couldn't stop screaming, and her mind was locked on Ray. Loki Vigrador blinked awake, panicking as his mind raced. Where was he? He was in an asylum, and then it all hit him. I still remember the moment I charged into the horror of the undead. He screamed as horror hit. His right arm and left leg were just gone. A girl popped in front of him, clocking that he was awake. Vigrador shot back, asking who the hell was standing there. The girl strode in and introduced herself as the head of the hospital, and when Loki flinched, she realized the pain relief spell had finally worked. Because the moment he could speak again, he was hearing exactly who she wanted him to ask for help. Vigrador pleaded for her to mend his broken arm and leg, swearing she could fix him and offering any price in the world. Then he insisted, one more time, that he couldn't just walk away and let it end like this. She snapped back that she couldn't heal him herself, but she had a name, someone who could. Hearing that, the young man lit up at once. Then he pressed for the truth, finally able to stop his impatience and learn the name. She starts talking about Ray and makes it crystal clear that the one he threw away was him. Loki is completely rattled. He can't accept it, and he refuses to believe it with everything in him. He presses again, so only Ray can do this, and then he makes it crystal clear he didn't do a single thing to him. The girl stays silent, then Vidroder explodes into a shout, claiming he's the leader of the Gunkino Dongwa team, swearing the Emperor himself has recognized her, and warning that killing comrades is a crime with deadly consequences. The manager bluntly says 5 people have died in the last 5 years, and Loki looks absolutely crushed, like hope just vanished. She kept insisting there weren't any white mages left in his party, and honestly that blew her mind. Because white mages are the safest role, yet his team had already racked up 5 nasty incidents. She admits it all clicked because Kanata's report proved the truth. Loki used her as a shield right when he was seconds from dying. The young man scrambled to defend himself, but she kept pushing, saying he'd sold the rest of his comrades to the monster, insisting she was finally ready to confess, and Loki's fear showed all over his face. The manager didn't hold back. She exploded in rage, screamed at him, and made it crystal clear that after hearing he was the one behind it all, he'd never slip out of this that easily. The leader leans in, eyes locked on her, and listens like every word could change everything. The girl bursts into laughter and he freezes because as an adventurer he's got a cross on him. Loki's lost and panicking, blurting out what it all means. She's laughing about his comrades. The manager leans in and asks straight up if he's still interested in what happened to them. Suglunstay lies trapped in a coma while Gymno is blind and her left limbs have been ripped away. Then Fail vanishes and everyone assumes he's dead because as she tries to speak, Loki's space warps with sheer horror. The manager starts boasting about his legendary adventure team, Gunquino Donghua, the one he couldn't stop bragging about. She swears she's gone, then Loki shatters like everything inside him finally snaps. He's in full shock over what he just heard, completely frozen with no clue what's going on. In the middle of the forest, wild rustling and crashing blows roar through the trees. A liquid monster crashes into White Maidry and the battle explodes. The magician grips a sword in his hand and hacks through the monster's tentacles in one ruthless strike. The monster leans in, talks him up, and practically begs him to play, like, let's have fun is the only rule. Ray doesn't even reply, he's lost in his thoughts, like his mind is racing somewhere no one can reach. The monster gurgles one nasty sound, and its limbs snap back together like they never separated. He bragged that every time he slices it, it snaps back like nothing happened, and somehow it never, ever runs dry on magic. He couldn't stop thinking about how many people and monsters she had somehow swallowed whole. Ray fights through the strikes, grinding his teeth as thoughts race in his head. He couldn't wrap his head around it. how a monster that huge could have ended up here right now. The tentacle nearly slammed into him, but he snapped out of the way. Then he warned, calling this undead terror a reader of the dead. Ray bolted backward and kept his head clear because this wasn't some random beast. It was a top-tier monster that should live near the Demon Lord's castle, and seeing it here was downright unthinkable, flat-out impossible. Ray finally understood. Last time it didn't just mess around. It blasted out a massive surge of magic on purpose, like a trap laid just to hook his attention and reel him in. The magician finally realized this had to be a test. So yeah, someone was dragging that monster out to put Ray to the test. And if the white mage was right, then there was only one outcome. Someone out there was pulling the strings, controlling the undead terror like it was nothing. It had to be a top-tier demon, or even worse. Ray whipped his gaze around, dead sure he was being watched this very second. The monster lunged for the guy, but he snapped into a somersault and slipped right out of the attack. He hit the ground and immediately regretted dragging this out, because there's no way he'd ever keep tabs on the observer now. On top of his argument, one brutal truth hit him. Liana was out there waiting for him. The liquid monster bellows and Ray's gut screams that his opponent is an S-rank nightmare, maybe even S+. He refuses to spill everything he's got, but he has to end this fast. A deadly aura snaps into place around Ray and he wastes no time. He goes all out. With a violent snap of motion, Ray launched herself straight at the monster. He darts through every strike with deadly grace, slicing the undead horror apart limb by limb. Ray slashes straight to the monster's core, right into the heart of the chaos. He finally spots its core, the dead weak point where the undead horror can be crushed. The magician yanks it free and the monster instantly crumples, way too weak to fight back. That's when he realizes, I found it, it's the key. Ray snaps his aura into a spear and makes up his mind. This strike will end the monster for good, and his face screams total confidence. The liquid monster shrieks like it's possessed, and the white mage charges straight at it. He swings in with a brutal finishing strike, and just like that, the monster is wiped out. And then boom, he instantly steps back. Ray stares down at what's in his hand and realizes it's the very core of death terror. Something he can either forge into a weapon or cash out for a fortune, but either way, he's grabbing it and taking it with him. Then he hears something and snaps his head around. To his shock, Liana suddenly burst out from the bushes right in front of him. She exhaled hard with relief and told him, wide-eyed, that he crushed the horror of the undead in an instant. Ray blurted out the girl's name and she shot back, calling him incredible. The girl stares at the magician, completely spellbound, then blurts out in awe that she watched him smash the core with one brutal blow, and still dodge those lightning-fast tentacles. Ray's cheeks flushed as he scratched the back of his head, admitting he'd already battled monsters like that again and again. He remembered this sickening truth about Yggdrasil's labyrinth. The worst horrors hit the middle floors, and yeah, those monsters were brutal, but down on the lower floors, the nightmares turned even worse. Ray tells the girls, since it's finally quiet, let's wrap this up, we'll leave first thing in the morning. Liana nods along. They trudge to their camp and then the guy spots something weird lurking off to the side. He halted mid-step and scanned the room in tense silence. When she lagged behind, the girl shouted his name to get him back, so Ray sprinted over, panting out his apology for the delay. He snaps his focus back to the core, and a memory hits him like a punch. Ray rang Liana and she popped over right away, asking what was happening, while the white mage leaned in and asked if, once they reached the capital, the girl wanted to grab something sweet to eat. Liana brings up sweets again and Ray can't help but wonder if she's not really into them. So she finally blurts out that she loves them and he grins, telling her they'll sell the core and throw a sweet holiday. Ray's practically glowing because he adores desserts and he already knows the perfect spot. Then he leans in and asks how she feels about the whole idea. The girl blushed and her mind wandered straight to desserts, but she still answered, if you don't mind, I'd be thrilled to eat. Ray lit up with excitement, like everything was finally locked in, and now he couldn't wait. The girl, though, nodded along with a painfully awkward agreement. The white magician stares at the sky and declares the sun's already gone, urging them to stop right here. Then Leona snaps his name back to him. He whips around to face her and demands what's happening, then she shrieks "Village," like she just spotted a monster. She practically bursts with joy, telling him she's finally found a village. They stormed up to a massive wall that towered over them. They both snap their heads up. Lena asks, "So this is a village?" And Ray answers, "Yeah, no doubt about it, this is a village." The girl dropped to the ground, blurting between breaths that she was unbelievably happy. And the magician snapped with worry, asking if she was okay. Then Liana met his eyes with a soft smile and told him everything was fine. She was just worn out a bit, and Ray smiled right back. He reaches out, grabs her hand and hauls her up, then realizes her exhaustion makes perfect sense, because they've been at it since dawn, got turned around and burned ages hunting for the right way. The heroes stare at the wall again, and Liana's jaw drops as she calls it an incredible fortress. Ray even argues that these stone walls must be packed with divine power, because in the past monsters tore through villages and left countless victims, so every settlement fought back by raising fortifications like this. Ray points at the gate and says that's the way to go. The girl nods in agreement and they bolt. They stopped and the magician instantly thought, "It's you," because that entrance was the only door in sight. Lena steps up to Ray and vows, "I'll go there first, I'll ask them to open the gate for us." The guy yanks her hand and demands she wait. Liana freezes, totally lost, while Ray stares at the wall and starts explaining. He claims this gate, just like the walls, is forged from divine power, blasting back anyone who dares use magic, from monsters to demons, and the second he thrusts his hand forward, boom, an explosion rips the air apart. Ray's hand gets burned, but he powers through, blurting that even the gates won't accept everyone. Then he slaps healing on himself. Liana went stiff with nerves, then hurried to apologize, admitting she knew the world kept monsters and demons out, but she never imagined it could work on humans. Ray shook it off and told her the gates were built mainly to slam the door on monsters and demons, so there was nothing to worry about. He even reassured her she didn't need to understand the details, and guessed this divine gate was her first time seeing something like it. An unknown knight loomed in front of Ray, claws ready to strike, and Ray stiffened, blade up, eyes locked on every move, while panic hit like a wall and he just froze, not daring to breathe or figure out his next move. The knight clamps the long sword in both hands, his face swallowed by shadow, while the other man grips the hilt like he's about to strike. Then Liana slips in a soft call to Ray, trying to pull his attention from the knife-edge silence. The stranger snapped his focus to the girl and the boy and fired off a straight question, demanding to know if they were truly people or if something else lurked inside them. The boys stare out into the night, eyes wide and faces twisted in confusion, completely stunned, not knowing what's happening or why any of this is even going down. Turns out the stranger caught a wild surge of magic spilling off those guys, and he realized they weren't just travelers at all. He was staring at demons, dressed up to fool everyone. Atra, the holy knight, wears the diamond rank, proof of pure power and unwavering devotion, and he tirelessly guards the divine tree that towers right at the village's gates. Ray froze in shocked disbelief when she realized the tree's guardian, Knight Atra, was way older than she'd ever pictured for someone with that kind of rank. The knight brushed off the man's remark and snapped that it was just luck, while Atra chimed in that the truth was even harsher. He'd barely begun, and he still had a mountain of lessons before he could ever live up to his rank as a true guardian. Ray stared into the night with sharp focus, a flicker of doubt tightening his eyes, then leaned in and demanded, almost amazed, if he was truly that lucky like he said. To open a gate this powerful, you've got to be packed with real divine power, and based on how effortlessly Atra moved earlier, there's no way she's just some ordinary person. Tonight hit hard, and he marched right up to the guys, begged them for forgiveness over that misunderstanding, and did everything he could to calm the tension and earn back their trust. If those restaurants hadn't been shut down, Atra would have treated everyone to a tasty apology meal, no excuses, but all he had to hand over was water, and that night pushed him to hunt down a solid hotel with a discount. Liana broke into a smile and thanked the knight. Then the boy introduced himself as Ray and revealed the girl's name was Liana. The man hurriedly apologized for the late visit and explained how the knight saved them by letting them into the village. The knight snapped in shock when he learned the boy and girl were really out here in the forest. This place is terrifying, and once he saw what they'd survived on that risky walk, he admitted they were unbelievably lucky to still be alive. Atra clocked it right away then, seeing the reaction, his face flushed, and he almost instantly lost the urge to keep chatting in that same laid-back tone. Suddenly, the knight blurted out a crushing truth to the boys, one he'd kept locked away until this exact moment. Right now, the village is slammed with a brutal problem, one that messes up everyone's life and makes their everyday routine feel hopelessly harder. Atra closed in, stared them down, and Ray, still stunned, prompted him again, pressing for the exact details of the trouble that just erupted. For months, this village has been trapped in the demon's grip, spilling terror and wrecking lives, and now the boy presses the knight again, desperate to uncover every detail and grasp just how deadly this crisis really is. The boy leaned in, all curious, and asked Atra if he'd ever heard of a werewolf, and the knight snapped back as he carried on, saying a werewolf is basically a demon, the kind people casually call a wolfman. For months on end, this village has been stuck in a nightmare, mercilessly hunted by a demon that won't stop stalking their days and turning every moment into terror. The boy realized the road with Lyanna was strangely quiet, no werewolves at all, so Atra said, if we'd run into a demon we wouldn't have made it to the village, and then Ray leaned in and asked, so how strong was that werewolf? This werewolf is ranked C, so you're staring at a truly dangerous predator. And if the country had any clue the village was under threat, they would have already marched in a squad of holy knights to wipe it out. Ray guessed the helpers were probably already wiped out, and Atra snapped back that Ray wasn't wrong. This kid was quick on his feet, because 4 diamond-ranked knights had been dispatched to that village. Even with years of training and hard-earned experience, every knight got cut down mercilessly without warning by the werewolf, and the villagers' fear and despair exploded. Ray gasped, asking if every knight really got wiped out in that run-in with the werewolves. Then Atra snapped the truth. There were 3 of them, and that one detail turned everything into a brutal, tragic mess. That's why this village is now cut off from the outside world. Nobody can cross the borders, nobody can reach for help, and the food is nearly gone, pushing everything toward a breaking point. The 4 knights never came back from their mission, so Atra kept praying that reinforcements would hit soon. Yet day by day, his belief that the villagers would make it was slipping away. Lyanna stared at the boy, fear snapping into her eyes, then she swallowed her panic and called Ray. Because in that most brutal second, the night itself blurted out that this wasn't everything they still had to uncover. Atra realized that beyond the werewolves, another threat was stalking this village, just as deadly, and whatever was happening here was turning an already brutal situation into a full-on nightmare. That night, the tale hit harder. People in the settlement started vanishing one by one, leaving 0 clues behind, and the whole place snapped into panic, because even the guys couldn't stop shaking at the news. Then the werewolf showed up, and at first Atra figured it was some human scheme. But there were 0 traces, not even a scream, so the headman and the others shut down the theory and decided the disappearances had nothing to do with werewolves. The boy leaned in and asked the knight straight up if he truly agreed with the village elder's take on what was happening, and Atra snapped back that he didn't buy it, seeing the whole situation in a completely different way. That knight is convinced there's a spy lurking right inside the village, someone feeding the werewolves with crucial intel again and again, and even helping plan the kidnapping of the locals. In that village, a towering wall looms over everyone. Its surface blazes with a sword painted bright and loud for all to see. In this spot, the white-haired man apparently seized the upper hand, proving his power and precision in a knockout showdown. Among the legendary 4 deadly demons, there's Alfrexama, an ancient, brutal force of evil that feels straight out of a nightmare. This tale isn't over yet. Fresh secrets keep bursting open, and the heroes are about to face new trials we don't even know are coming yet. That short-haired girl with 2 tiny ponytails is Liz, and the dark-haired boy is Shu. The kids tiptoed in, balancing the knight's dinner on their palms like it was pure treasure, making sure not a thing spilled or got hurt. Atra lit up and thanked them with a warm smile, genuinely grateful for every ounce of care they gave. Shu grinned and let out a quiet chuckle, practically glowing with joy like his whole face was brimming with warmth, while Liz stood beside him, eyes wide with shock and curiosity. Ray stared into the night and asked if those children were his, but Atrasan stayed calm and flatly said they weren't his, and they weren't even his blood relatives. Those were the hotel owner's kids. Once they spotted Ray and Lyanna, they practically lit up, walked right over with warm smiles and introduced themselves, saying their names like it was the best news ever. The little girl tiptoed up to the crowd, studied them with real wonder, and asked their names like she was determined to spark a warm, friendly conversation. The boys grinned and started introducing themselves, one by one. Kids and adults swapped warm handshakes, smiling like they trusted each other and couldn't wait to get to know one another. And Liz and Liana lit up because this meeting felt like it truly mattered. The knight told them he couldn't leave, his duty meant staying on guard. And every day the children brought him food, so he kept his strength up and held the line without getting pulled away. Ray instantly clocked what was going on, lit up with praise for the kids, and made it clear that every meal Atra got, and every bit of support she needed, was because of them. When the kids heard those kind words and real praise aimed right at them, bright smiles exploded across their faces, and you could feel their spirits soar like they suddenly mattered more than ever. Out of nowhere, the knight pulled Shu and Liz into action, get Ray and Liana to the local hotel. It had been empty for ages, and Shu could practically feel the kids' mom lighting up the second she saw fresh faces. Liz and Shu stared at Atra in disbelief, asking if their mom would actually be happy to have guests. Then Atra just smiled and calmly assured them he was absolutely certain it would be a real joy for her. The tiny kids stepped up as guides and ushered the guests straight to the local hotel, and Liana and Ray couldn't stop staring, because their little helpers were weirdly, wonderfully friendly. People wore gentle smiles, savoring the moment, until a knight suddenly leaned in and told Ray he could point him to an amazing inn, run by Liz and Shu's mother, where they always welcomed you in with warm, cozy hospitality. Atra clocked that the hotel was cheap and handed them a massive bathroom, which made it insanely convenient, and with no reason to say no, the boys agreed, while Ray was already buzzing about spending the night there. The hotel grounds sprawl out clean, gorgeous, and wide open, lined with lush plants that make the whole place feel cozy, picture-perfect, and instantly inviting to every guest. Night had already dropped, and a bright moon hung over the hotel house, spilling cool silver light through the tree branches and turning the whole place into a calm, cozy wonderland. The kids burst in and told their mother they had guests, and she sprang to life at once, rushing to the kitchen, firing up the cooking, and scrambling to get everything perfect for their new visitors. Breathless and a little on edge, she introduced herself as Shinoka, the inn's owner, then flashed a friendly smile and ushered everyone inside, promising cozy rooms and a warm, caring welcome. The kids burst into laughter when they saw their mom panting, and Ray bowed his head and apologized for arriving with Lena out of nowhere. Yet the innkeeper just grinned and waved it off like it was no big deal. Lately, hardly anyone showed up, so Shinoka grabbed the boys and thanked them for sticking around. And she couldn't believe they'd even made it to the village at all, with demons still prowling just outside its walls. The boy leaned in, eager, and asked if she meant werewolves, the ones that terrify everyone around here. Then he grinned and said he and Liana were lucky, because they'd get through the journey without running into any dangerous creatures. The innkeeper's jaw dropped because some villagers had tried to slip into distant lands for help, thinking they'd find salvation, yet almost every one of them was cut down on the spot. The girl explained that werewolves are basically demon beasts with an insanely sharp sense of smell. So yeah, they're deadly, and she basically said the boys were incredibly lucky they dodged that nightmare. Ray stared into the dark and realized just how blessed he was, because with Liana by his side, they bulldozed through every nightmare, dodging demons and werewolves and somehow surviving every brutal trial. Turns out the village really was ringed by a pack of werewolves, and if their noses were as sharp as everyone feared, they'd already caught Ray and Liana's scent, cranking the anxiety sky high. The boy swore his nose could sniff out any demon, yet on the road to the village he didn't catch a single one. Nothing. The hostess rushed to apologize, saying she'd kept him because the guests were probably worn out. Then the girl stepped in and guided the boys straight to their room. As the guests got led to a cozy, quiet room on the second floor, right when they were about to hit the stairs, the boy suddenly blurted out the girl's name, pulling her focus to whatever was about to happen. Ray needed answers fast, so he cornered the innkeeper and begged for the full story, what happened in the village and who got hit in the chaos. That quiet morning didn't last long. Before sunrise even faded, the boys were already wide awake, out of bed, and sprawled in their cozy hotel room, itching to kick off a brand new day. Liana decided she'd lock in every word Shanoka-san said, fully understand what was going on, and then map out her next move. Werewolves started slinking around the village 3 months ago, terrorizing everyone in sight, and the very first one snatched a young woman while she was out hunting, leaving her gone forever. At the village's divine gate, they hauled in the missing girl's severed head, and its awful condition sent the whole town into a sickening dread, because whatever did it had already devoured the rest of her body clean. Then the villagers clenched their courage, forged into one battle squad, and marched straight at the monsters terrorizing their home. Sure, they fought like legends, but every last one of them died. A few days later, just like Atrasan promised, 3 holy knights rode out to wipe the werewolves clean, only to get slaughtered themselves, and then the next crew that rushed in for help met the exact same fate. Ray couldn't shake the feeling that this whole incident was one of those creepy disappearances that pops up around here now and then, leaving everyone rattled, anxious, and totally lost. Liana snapped his suspicions into place, and then dropped the bombshell that all of this chaos really started back then. First, one person vanished, then another, until 28 people were gone with 0 clues, and the sickening part, every single one was a man, and that's when panic and dread slammed into the villagers. She could barely wrap her head around it. This village was sealed behind a divine gate, untouched by anything meant to break through, yet somehow there was still no proof werewolves slipped in and people kept vanishing anyway. Because people kept vanishing with no sign of a break-in, Atrasan snapped to one chilling conclusion. A spy was hidden in their village, feeding info to forces beyond their borders. The vanishings kicked off the second the werewolves showed up in town, and honestly, it's hard to call it coincidence when their arrival sparked a whole chain of creepy, unexplained incidents. Lena leaned in and grilled Ray. Did he think a sneaky spy was blending among the villagers, quietly causing the disappearances or slipping vital info straight to enemy forces? The boy said maybe this isn't some ordinary spy at all, maybe it's something way worse. A slick, dangerous creature that wears a human disguise and slips right into the villagers' midst. Shanoka burst into the room with a shout that dinner was ready, cutting straight through their serious conversation. And the girls instantly looked guilty, apologizing for dragging the guys away at such a huge moment. The prepared dishes sat perfectly lined on the table, tempting everyone with mouthwatering smells that pulled the whole crowd toward the meal. The boys stayed lost in thought about everything they'd just heard, then quietly slipped out, heading straight for the table where dinner was already waiting. Ray said he'd heard the village was starving, and he couldn't believe the innkeeper stacked the plates so high. Then he swallowed hard and asked, "Isn't this too much with supplies this scarce in these parts?" The girl finally admitted the village was starving and that the boys were the first guests in months, so the hostess leaned in and told them not to hold back, to dive right in and feast on the best she had. Ray shot the innkeeper a heartfelt apology and thanked her from the bottom of his heart for every bit of kindness and care, and Liana jumped right in with her own words of gratitude. Then Shanoka slipped out of the room, leaving the boys alone. Liana urged the boys to dig in and finally unwind after that brutal day, and Ray snapped into grateful agreement. Then, out of nowhere, something snagged his attention, and his face twisted with confusion as the boys stared right back, totally lost. Tiny kids burst into the room and Shu froze. He realized he'd just crashed an important moment, so he blurted out an awkward, guilty apology. Liz leaned in like she was making a point, saying it smelled absolutely delicious, and the instant she finished, those little stomachs rumbled on cue from pure hunger. Ray, staring at their thin faces, blurted, "Did you kids eat dinner?" They nodded hard and said they'd each had one little piece of bread. Then the boy shot a shocked look when he realized Shu and Liz had hardly eaten at all. "We're not allowed to eat much," they admitted. Liana and Ray smiled with real warmth, scooting the boy and girl up to their table, and they urged them to eat together, share stories, and relax in a welcoming, friendly atmosphere. Ray didn't even hesitate. He handed over every bite of his food to the kids, and Shu and Liz lit up with genuine joy, smiling so warmly because his kindness meant everything to them. The boy shrugged off hunger, then admitted he had to trade. He wanted something from them in return. He said the kids couldn't just get tasty food, They had to meet a condition, and Shu and Liz leaned in, instantly curious, asking what they had to do to get to that meal. During the conversation, Ray's real wish lit up. He wanted the kids to split the food fairly and evenly and show each other respect the whole time. Liz and Shu lit up with warm smiles, looking genuinely relieved, and confidently promised they'd split the food fairly, no fuss, no problems at all. Right then, the kid's mother burst into the room, her voice stern but steady as she demanded her daughter and son stay out of the way, stay quiet, and stop disturbing the guests. No noise, no disrespect. Shanoka shot her kids a shocked, slightly worried look and asked why they were eating the guests' food, while Ray, cool as ice, calmly explained that it was totally fine because he was the one who gave them permission. The innkeeper was about to knock the guest's bill down to cover the food he'd lost, but the young man bowed politely and demanded the full price stay the same, showing real respect. Shinoka leaned in, grilling Ray with doubt. "Are you really sure about doing this?" And Ray snapped back, dead certain, saying the food had been made just for him. The innkeeper beamed at the young man, apologized for the hassle, and bowed so deeply it felt like a promise, thanking him from the heart for his kindness and his understanding. Ray leaned in and clocked it fast. Atrasin, the guardian of the divine tree, kept the girl's children right by his side, trusted them fully, and treated them with nothing but warm, sincere care. The innkeeper grinned warmly, telling him her kids always haunt the night and cling to him like family, so she's overflowing with gratitude and truly thankful for Atru's care. Ray couldn't shake the feeling that the night itself was kinder than it looked, and he thanked the innkeeper from the bottom of his heart. Her kids always slipped him food, proving they treated him with real warmth. Shinoka nodded along with the idea, sure it was probably right. Then her eyes flashed as a need to add her own twist burst through, different from what she just heard. The girl revealed that Atra and San once lived with a family in a distant city, far away from all this chaos, and that piece of his past still grips him hard, steering every move he makes. All the knight's relatives were slaughtered by bloodthirsty demons, and he was left standing alone. Only one battered old photograph remained, clinging to the memories of the family he lost. Shiana had heard a wild rumor Atrasin, the guardian of the divine tree, once had kids roughly the same age as Shu and Liz, and that's exactly what seemed to spark his soft spot and warm, gentle way with them. Ray instantly saw it in Atra's eyes. He'd lost everyone he'd ever loved, and that brutal tragedy was what crushed him now, dragging him down with heavy, silent despair. He knew the danger closing in on his family, but he still refused to run. Because if he didn't stand his ground, the divine gate would go inactive, and the whole city would be left wide open for the enemy. The villagers genuinely thank the knight for guarding them with all his heart, and the young man finally gets it. This is why Atra clings so tightly to the innkeeper's kids. Even after losing his family, he refuses to stop fighting. Grief claws at his chest in a way you can't even picture, but he still steps up to protect the village as the guardian of the divine tree. The hallway glows softly, wrapping everything in cozy warmth, and the moment that last meal ended, every scrap of trash was already tossed out to keep the place spotless and in perfect order. Ray's wiped out after a brutal day, so he craves a steamy bath to melt the stress away, then slips into bed to rest up, fully recharged for whatever comes next. The young man begged for his own room, craving privacy more than ever as everything fell apart around him. Ray lit a fuse under Liana when his blunder revealed the room was built for 3. Now the boys had to cram into the tiny space and share it with the owner's daughter. The young man told Liana straight up that sharing a room with another girl would be torture for him. He's a guy. It makes him feel awkward, and it's way too hard to get any real rest in that situation. Liana chose to crash on the floor and hand the bed to the girl to spare everyone trouble. And at that exact moment Ray's mind snapped back to the bath. His eyes went wide with sudden fear like he'd just remembered something vital. Liana's rage boiled as she stood there glaring, trying and failing to hold back the irritated scowl that kept sharpening with every second, her eyes burning with pure, stern fury. Ray leaned in and carefully probed what was wrong with her. Maybe a stomach ache, maybe she just didn't like the food. But Lena stayed cool, smiled, said the meal was delicious, and even thanked him for the treat. The young man stared at the girl's sudden, out-of-nowhere behavior, totally thrown off. unable to read what was really driving her weird mood, and the uncertainty hit him hard, filling his chest with confusion and anxiety. Turns out Ray had handed his share to the kids, and the food they were meant to get was actually Lena's. So when the guy heard that, his confusion went through the roof as he tried to figure out how on earth it happened. The young man blurted out, panicked, asking if she was hungry, because if she fainted, things could get ugly fast. The girl just smiled and told him she was totally fine, saying she'd been eating dried meat for ages. Ray's stomach twisted with shame as the mistake he made finally hit him, one wrong move that could have ruined everyone's day. So he stopped dead, overwhelmed, and started replaying every second of what he'd done. The young man told Liana not to apologize, saying he doesn't feel hungry like this very often because he has a one-of-a-kind body. And when she heard that, Liana straight up asked him if it was really true. Ray drove his point home, confessing that as a kid he'd been a slave, beaten into adapting to brutal living conditions and scraps for food, and that suffering warped his whole body in lasting ways. As a kid, he was never truly fed. Most days he barely got enough to eat, so hunger gnawed at him non-stop until that brutal way of living became the only life he knew. One girl didn't just help, she rescued a helpless, unfortunate boy, and in that instant she became his real lifeline when his world turned darkest and he needed someone most. She was trapped in slavery too, choking down her own misery day after day, yet she still, without hesitation, shared her food with Ray, urging him with real concern to eat plenty so he could grow strong. While all that was happening, she was probably starving, constantly running short on food, so she'd cut her own comfort and nourishment to make sure Ray could survive and get stronger. Liana finally got why that young man handed his food to the kids. It wasn't just generosity, it was pure care, and Ray caught that spark, realizing it was his turn to step up, be kind like that girl, and start helping others too. With heartfelt respect, she swore he's truly the kindest guy around, someone who genuinely cares and stays thoughtful even when life gets brutally tough. Ray blurted out, half skeptical, asking if Liana was really talking about him, and she just smiled calmly, confidently saying she honestly believed he was kind and decent. The girl was convinced those kids would never forget Ray's kindness, and Liana admired him all the more, because his actions screamed genuine care and a heart that felt real. The girl wholeheartedly believes this guy went above and beyond, showing rare generosity and real concern for others. So his kindness feels like something worthy of the deepest respect and wild admiration. The boy caught himself thinking about how Lena always spiraled over what everyone thought, and how that fear often kept her from ever being truly herself, or showing the real, one-of-a-kind spark that made her her. She's always scanning every move around her, soaking up every word like it matters, then clamming up the second she might say the wrong thing, terrified of what her words and everyone's judgment could unleash. When she talks, she almost always praises other people and gives everyone kindness. That doesn't mean she's perfect all the time, but for a girl her age, that kind of heart is seriously rare. Ray finally connects the dots. These sharp, cautious instincts come from the life she endured in slavery, where one mistake could get her killed. It's just my guess, but she was probably trained from childhood to be an elite slave, cracked under strict control and brutal tests, which means she must have survived a mountain of suffering. She masks a brutal emotional wound with a tightly built defense because she can't afford to get hurt again, and she needs at least a shred of inner strength when life gets ugly. Just like Ray once did, he buried his emotional wound, desperately trying to shield himself from the ache inside and keep his brutal past from tearing him apart from within. Now she's finally free, no chains, no control, but something still lingers like a ghost of her old life as a slave, and still, deep down, she's just a 12-year-old girl. She has to live on her own terms, no fences, no limits, no chains, and Ray is dead serious about tearing those restraints off her so she can finally breathe, open up, and be fully herself. The young man took a deep breath and decided to talk to Liana, praying she'd answer. Then she heard him and snapped back right away, zeroing in on him like she was all ears. Ray pointed out that he and Liana are bound by an official contract that governs their relationship, but he made it crystal clear he wasn't her master, and he had zero plans to chain down her freedom. She stared at the young man, completely stunned, and her eyes screamed, "I don't get it." like she couldn't wrap her head around what he was really trying to say. The boy calmly told Liana to stop panicking, and Ray soothed her with a gentle head rub, soft words, steady touch, and a push toward calm. The young man pours out his real wish that one day the 12-year-old girl will chart her own path. No chains, no slavery, just freedom. Liana listens close, then nods and agrees with Ray. As long as that young man stays close to Liana and keeps backing her up, he'll always be ready to leap in, shield her from every danger, and stand watch to protect her peace. Ray had been craving this moment for ages. Now the second he gets in the pool, he dives into that cool, comforting water and finally tosses his worries aside, at least for a little while. It would be packed with people and buzzing with life, but ever since that creepy werewolf incident, everyone in town is on edge, terrified, anxious, and scared to breathe. Suddenly, the young man spotted a leg sticking out from the corner, and right as he did, someone blurted out an apology out of nowhere, shattering the silence. Turns out Liana couldn't resist either. She dove right in and started swimming. Ray leaned in and pressed the girl, asking why she chose to show up right at that exact moment. The young man nervously asked if Liana wanted to hit the pool first, but she smiled and said, "Not yet." She wanted to wait a bit and swim later. The girl stormed up to Ray, met his gaze, and offered a heartfelt apology, finally realizing her actions had caused him trouble and left him stuck with the fallout. At first, Liana was totally lost about what was really going on and what this whole mess meant. But once it clicked, she stepped in, showed real empathy, and helped the young man get through the water. Ray said, cool as ice, "You don't need to do any of this. I'm not trying to play some so-called master for Liana, and I'm not expecting extra effort or special attention from you." The girl didn't hold back. She admitted she was drowning in anxiety and fear, because the young man was doing so many amazing, meaningful things for her. But she couldn't match his sincerity with the same care and full support. With all of this on her shoulders, Liana swallowed her pride, looked at Ray with raw sincerity, and begged him to let her do at least the smallest thing she could, just to help him, and to show him how grateful she truly was. The young man caught every bit of her real feeling. He felt the heat in her words and believed every honest bit of her heart. Ray used to feel the same way. He feared he'd be worthless, so he threw himself into everything he could just to help others, and he made it his mission to calm Lena's worries and boost her confidence. The boy figured it was the right thing to do, so he accepted the girl's help, offered with real kindness and a sincere heart. Ray let Leona slip in to help him and wash his back without a single word of protest. Relief and pure joy flooded her the moment it happened, and a bright, sincere smile lit up her face like she'd finally caught her breath. First, Lena fired a question at Ray. Did he truly mean what he said, and was he ready to take her help? Ray shot back with total confidence, yes. Then Lena stepped right up, grinned, and made it clear she could always be counted on. Lena told Ray there's zero shame in that, no reason to feel embarrassed, because it's completely natural, and Ray fired back that he can scrub the dirt off himself without anyone's help. The girl beckoned the young man over, and he immediately decided to grab a towel before anything else. Liana leaned in and asked Ray, voice gentle as a whisper, if anything hurt. Ray just smiled and said he felt zero pain, and the second those words hit, pure joy lit up her face. Liana beamed, smiling like she finally found her place, yet Ray couldn't stand it because he felt her acting so submissively, like a slave, and it made his stomach twist with unease. Suddenly, the girl blurted out to Ray-sama, "Can you really take down those deadly, sneaky werewolves?" And in her eyes it looked like a task so brutal it might as well be impossible. The young man said taking down the werewolves would be way simpler than facing those terrifying undead they ran into yesterday. Then he warned that it'd get brutal fast if they had to take on 3 enemies at the same time. Werewolves are lightning-fast demons, even quicker than the undead themselves, yeah, even vegan ones. If one slips free, it'll drag more into the chaos, and that's terrifying. Leona gets the whole picture, but something even worse is still gnawing at her. The girl's mind raced back to those creepy disappearances that had swept through the village only recently, and dread swallowed her whole, while Ray clenched the memory tight, knowing this wasn't something to brush off. First things first, werewolves don't roam our world at all. They live locked away in a demonic realm so far beyond human reach that nobody even really feels their presence. On top of the dungeons where the demons, and even the demon lord himself, hide, massive magical barriers ring their home, sealing it shut so they can't slip into our human world. Ray sat with Lyanna and kept explaining, piece by piece, breaking down every crucial detail and hidden nuance until the whole situation finally clicked for her. The demons slipped into the village under everyone's noses, ducking the whole protective setup that was built to stop exactly this kind of invasion and keep the people safe. Ray's jaw dropped. He couldn't wrap his head around how demons slipped into the village without even so much as touching the protective barriers meant to stop infiltration. Lyanna bowed with regret and apologized to the boy, knowing this mess could have hit him with nasty emotions. But he brushed it off, saying nothing terrible happened. Even so, the fear still gnawed at him deep down. In human territory, two kinds of demons rule the shadows. The ones born here and the ones that crawl up from the dungeons like werewolves who claw their way in from those depths. Ray suddenly snapped back to the truth. Back in their world, there was an ancient dungeon acting like a secret doorway, linking the demonic world to the human one. Lyanna nodded and confirmed he was right. 3 years back, an SS-ranked team stumbled onto a doorway to a demonic world and came back with proof in hand, shocking everyone. They confirmed the road was real, but the government stayed tight-lipped about which dungeon that path was found in. So yeah, this dungeon really is real. Ray finally clicked. Some foul undead horror had been using this hidden passage to slip into the world of humans whenever it pleased. Right now, there's a real chance far worse monsters, stronger and deadlier than anything we've seen, have already slipped into this dungeon and are creeping toward the human world. Ray thanked Lena from the bottom of his heart, nodding with real respect as he told her info mattered more than anything, and that her help was absolutely invaluable to him. Her expression snapped in an instant, surprise flared, and mystery followed, like a huge idea had just struck her or something massive finally clicked in her head. Leonor wanted to help Ray wash up completely, scrubbing him clean so he'd have it easier, but Ray snapped back that he'd do it himself. A little later, a respectable older man with a warm smile stepped up to the travelers, bowed politely, and apologized for the late visit, saying he didn't want to interrupt anyone. Before anyone could ask questions, the mysterious stranger stepped forward and announced himself as Oki Yuz, the village chief, wearing a grim, commanding look that made everyone immediately respect him. The headman bowed with heartfelt respect and apologized to the travelers for barging in and stealing their rest, then insisted his request was urgent, the kind that couldn't wait a single second. The boys rushed in, soothed Oki, and told him he had nothing to fear, then promised to help untangle every mess that had popped up, and they even grilled him about whether the elder's visit was tied to the fresh rash of werewolves creeping around their area. That's exactly how it went, because lately this tiny village has been getting hunted non-stop by vicious werewolves, and every night feels like a death sentence for everyone inside. Every night sent to shield the village got wiped out fighting werewolves, the food stores are vanishing day by day, and the villagers are stuck living in non-stop desperation. Worst of all, they can't even run away. The fort and the Divine Gate have slammed the demons back, stopping them from tearing into the village, but if this keeps spiraling, the village won't last much longer. With a grim stare, the elder leaned in and pressed the travelers to promise. Once they left the village, they had to spread the word about what was happening, and if they could, warn the knights of the capital so they'd ride in and rescue them. If they truly plan to leave this village, they have to make sure they fulfill Akios's request, and pass along every scrap of what they know about what's happening right now. The traveler shot back that he understood every worry and every request from the elder, and that he'd absolutely factor them in before he made his next move. The boys were still set on heading for the imperial capital, and Ray swore he'd go straight to Oka's headman, tell him exactly what was happening and push for help, so reinforcements could stream in from the capital and save the residents. The headman bowed with blazing respect, praising the boy's promise, and making it crystal clear that it was his grit, his choice to stand firm, that turned him into the village's final hope for everyone in the middle of a brutal crisis. Suddenly, the man blurted out that all of this wasn't enough, that something else had to happen right now, something huge, or the whole situation would never be fixed. The headman refused to shove the boys into panic, giving them space to think and get ready. But then a jaw-dropping, ultra-urgent message slammed into his hands, demanding immediate action. Ray got hit with a jolt when he heard the message came from Atra, the keeper of the sacred tree, and real worry lit up his face. so he pressed the headman again for every crucial detail. The boys decided to dig into that notification, just to make sure it really came from Atrasin, the revered keeper, and the elder confirmed it with a nod, telling them again that the message had indeed been sent to him. Atra told them, if you're leaving the village, do it tonight, because the keeper didn't seem to feel the werewolves at all, and that night escape would be way safer. At night, some villagers vanished without a whisper, like the dark swallowed them whole, and the rest started to shake with rising dread, terrified of whatever lurked beyond the unknown. Ray admitted he'd already heard about those creepy disappearances in Atrasin and from Shinnikisen himself, and that truth slammed home just how deadly and serious things were in the village. Shinoki handled it with calm understanding, and the village chief noticed something terrifying. Only the men were vanishing with no clue why, and that mystery sent the whole village into deeper fear. People threw out a stunned rhetorical question: why were the men the ones vanishing while everyone else stayed completely untouched? The elder's voice shook with pure excitement and crushing worry as he admitted he didn't have the foggiest clue why those mysterious disappearances were happening, and he couldn't tell them the exact reason either. Ray is a man too, so staying in the village is pure danger for him, because even now the real nightmare is still the werewolves, stalking everyone with no exceptions. Leona snapped to Ray Sam and demanded answers about what they could do in this mess, but even Ray couldn't pin down how to help or what move to make first. 3 vicious werewolves just burst into the village, and with people vanishing left and right, panic is exploding. Then witnesses spot creepy, strange hands nearby too, and suddenly the danger feels unstoppable. Ray shot Liana an apology, finally seeing how exhausted she was, and knowing they had to bolt right now, but the girl didn't even hesitate, nodded fast, and promised she'd stick with Ray Sam, ready to back him up no matter what. All at once, the innkeeper shot her kids a weird, careful, slightly tense look, like her gut was already screaming that something was off and trouble was creeping closer. Liz, shaken and a little scared, asked the boys with hope in her eyes if they were really leaving right now, trying to catch any last shred of chance to stay a bit longer and keep the moment with them. Their mother kept drilling into them, stay inside the room, no exceptions, because if they stepped outside, danger might be waiting and they'd be risking everything. Today, the kids couldn't wait to finally kick back, play games, and trade laughs with Ray and Liana, pure excitement on their faces, joy buzzing in the air as they counted down to that fun, friendly conversation. Ray apologized to the little ones with heavy, genuine regret, telling them they'd have to wait, and admitting he might not be able to give them the attention he wanted to in the near future. The young man swore to the kids he'd be back for sure. Next time, they'd finally get to play together and tear up with fun, and they could already feel the excitement building for the moment they'd get to meet Liana. The girl also gave them a warm promise. She'd swing by a bit later to spend time with the kids, back them up, and help them push through the tough days ahead. The innkeeper snapped at the headman, "Don't you dare ask them for more or push any extra demands. One unwanted request and you'll spook the guests right out the door." Ray decided to step up to Oki himself and fire off an important question right away. No waiting, full initiative and pure drive to clear up the mess as fast as he could. The guys started gearing up and piece by piece got ready to blast off on the road ahead. Atrasin suddenly broke in with a heartfelt apology, admitting with sincere regret that it all hit Ray and Liana so fast and so unexpectedly, knowing this turn would shock them and leave them totally confused. The young man smiled with calm confidence and said everything was fine, no complaints, no bitterness even after everything that had happened. Stepping outside the village at midnight was pure danger. Monsters were prowling everywhere, so if the guys blew this rare chance, they might never escape that settlement again. That night, he swallowed his pride, apologized to the boys with real sincerity for the mess he caused, and pleaded for their understanding, begging them to forgive him in that brutal, impossible situation. Ray said, calmly but firmly, "You don't have to apologize," then tried to soothe Adder before he pressed for the truth. Did he really feel no werewolf presence anywhere nearby? The knight stayed calm, swore there was zero sign of those demons nearby, and basically proved there was nothing to fear right now. When Atra heard the travelers hadn't run into any werewolves on the way to the village, he didn't waste a second. He unleashed his aura and went straight to check the area himself. And weirdly enough, the demons were nowhere to be found. Ray leaned in and listened to every word the knight said, Then after a quick pause he nodded like he'd nailed every detail. Right now is the perfect moment to slip out of the village. Don't wait, don't stall, because delaying can spell disaster. The guys thanked the knight from the bottom of their hearts, and Liana separately poured out her gratitude too, thanking them for the warm hospitality and the care they'd felt every single day of their stay. Atra bowed in modesty and insisted he didn't deserve any praise, then apologized again for stepping in at the absolute last second, calling it out as a messy surprise that might have thrown everyone into trouble. If the boys bolt right now, they'll only have an hour before they're forced out of werewolf territory, and yeah, the road stays deadly. But the knight can only pray Ray and Lyanna make it to the capital alive and unhurt. Atra hammered home that the knights in the capital had to be warned about the village situation ASAP, and Ray shot back that he'd never, ever forget it. At last, the boys clenched their courage and stepped out of the deserted village, their first strides aimed at some unknown road ahead, while the knight stayed planted at the gate and waved them off with his hand. A stranger he'd never seen before stood on the hilltop, stomping his foot like he was begging to be noticed. But the boys were so far away that they never even caught a glimpse of him. From the dark shadows, werewolves burst out in an instant, and nothing, no walls, no barriers stood in their way now, while a huge moon blazed overhead, bright and downright ominous. The demons wore satisfied, sinister grins as they practically twitched with impatience, ready to torture the village's peaceful souls, relishing every moment as they cranked cruelty up to the fullest. Meanwhile, Ray was locked in his own thoughts, replaying how Wiggin could have gotten beaten by that young kid, hunting for every reason and every twist that made that shocking result happen. The werewolves spotted the young man, then froze, no stalking, no pouncing, because they thought he was just some ordinary traveler and Alfrexama had drilled it into them. Don't attack unless there's a real reason. One of the werewolves froze in place, scanning the area in tense silence, then quietly beckoned someone, urging them to come closer. The werewolves clocked Liana right away. One demon lunged to attack her and Ray on the spot, while the other couldn't tear its eyes off her, because her powerful magic was calling to it. One demon stepped in front of the others, barking, "Stop! If we wait a bit and don't rush the strike, the knights will most likely reach this place in time." A brand new crew of knights has banded together and started riding out on their own, sweeping from village to town across the county to keep watch, and their arrival is just a ticking clock now, while the werewolves are already lining up to terrify and torment the villagers until those knights finally show up. The demons didn't have to kidnap anyone in the dead of night anymore. Turns out their new priorities made the whole process drag on forever, slow and exhausting beyond belief. One of the werewolves was poised to torture even the most defenseless children with zero hesitation, and not a shred of pity, compassion, or regret for what he was about to do. Another demon hungers for a sick thrill, satiated by the foal, then vanishes without a trace, devouring his fill straight from the heart. Demons descended on a defenseless village and tortured its terrified people with ruthless skill, driving peaceful souls into unbearable fear, unbearable pain, and total despair. The werewolves banded together and blasted into a thunderous, rowdy party, celebrating their terrifying control over the territory. The villagers were crushed by terror and shock, shaken to the core, devastated beyond belief, and frozen in helpless panic as the horror swallowed everything. Then bam, a demon went and laid hands on someone the villagers held in the highest regard, and the whole town went cold with dread, like danger was sprinting toward them right now. Turns out one werewolf snapped and chose to torture Sam, the sacred tree's guardian, the village's shield of strength, so when the residents heard, terror crashed over them, screaming that their protector might not make it. Panic slammed into the girls' chests, and they bolted from the demons at full speed, scrambling for every escape they could find, vanishing into the dark to hide. One of the girls shrieked at the top of her lungs, begging everyone to bolt right now and outrun the werewolves closing in, until a demon cut her off with a cruel, chilling "It's too late. The divine gate is the only way in and out." Then the werewolf planted himself right in front of the innkeeper, snarling like a guillotine, promising she'd have nowhere to run and no sliver of salvation. One of the residents says it straight. This isn't the same village anymore. Everything's been wrecked beyond recognition, and the old look, the comfort, and the long-awaited peace are gone for good. The werewolf let out a chilling chuckle and said this place had turned into a full-blown trap, People were locked in with zero chance to break free or escape. Demons burst into the inn and struck the innkeeper in an instant, smashing through her defenses before she could even react, so she couldn't fight back at all. A brutal cage sat right beside the werewolf, staring everyone in the face. The demon yanked the sword straight out of the girl's grasp with a brutal, lightning-fast snatch, tearing it from her clenched hands and leaving her with zero chance to fight back. The werewolf stared the innkeeper in the face and made it crystal clear. An ordinary sword, no matter how sharp or masterfully forged, would never, ever bring him down. The demon snapped with vicious greed and chose to devour Shinoki's innocent children, savoring every cruel second of what was coming, while Shinoki's own girl froze in total shock, drowning in horror so deep she couldn't even find the words and she had no idea how to stop it. The innkeeper, panicked to his core, shouted for the kids to huddle up. Then he bolted, found a hiding spot fast, and dragged them out of sight from the deadly danger closing in. Now that the werewolf knows exactly where the kids are, confidence hardens in his chest as he commits to his plan, while the demon, grinning wickedly, decides to snack on the girl first before turning to her children. Right then, Ray burst in and launched a strike, slam-damaging the werewolf and leaving the demon writhing in pure agony, utterly unable to move, while Ray rushed in time to save the children with the hotel owner and stood up for them. The young man rushed in with a sincere apology for running late, but Shinoko-san didn't snap at him. Ray had saved her life at the exact moment it mattered most. Still, one look at her face made it obvious that the werewolf wasn't far away. Ray said those rude, poorly trained dogs need a hard lesson right now, so they stop causing trouble and ruining everyone's peace. A brutal brawl erupted between the young man and the ferocious werewolf, and in the middle of it, Ray made his point loud and clear: don't mess with him, because testing his patience is a fast way to get wrecked. The battle was pure danger, every single move could shatter everything, even lives. And then the demon suddenly slipped the blow like it was reading the boy's thoughts, leaving him stunned at how unreal that dodge was. The werewolf tried to outsmart his opponent with a sneaky, unexpected trick, but it backfired fast, and he paid for his bold gambit with a badly wounded arm. Once again, the young man and the demon crashed into a brutal showdown, both going all in until their last ounce of strength, refusing to break, driven by pure willpower, fearless determination, and courage to reach their goal. Ray lined up his strike with razor-sharp focus, thought out every move, and when it landed, he blasted the werewolf to the ground, taking control in a fight that was draining every ounce of him. A young man stands amid the wreckage of a ruined hotel, debris crunching underfoot, staring into the damage like the world just collapsed on him, eyes clouded with thought and a quiet, aching sadness as he tries to fully grasp what really happened. Ray carefully scans the room where he battled the demon, broken table, shattered glass. Everywhere he looks, the aftermath of a brutal fight screams in plain sight. Suddenly, the werewolf snapped out of its shock and bolted, totally baffled by who this boy even was, because the kid didn't look like any holy knight, and he wasn't throwing around a single shred of divine power in those fights. The demon couldn't make sense of that mysterious unknown boy. His punch hit with an inhuman blur. Before the werewolf could even think, it was already over and he got crushed. Ray knew that demon wouldn't hesitate for a second. If he kept fighting, he was a dead man because that monster was stronger than him, relentless and way too experienced. That demon had to sprint for his life. If he slowed down for even a second, he'd drop dead right here. And he knew he had to rush to the gate and report to the captain about that mysterious boy, the one who'd just shown insane strength. The werewolf staggered into his boss's office, barely holding himself together, exhausted, bleeding, gasping for air, and somehow pushing out urgent news that could flip everything that comes next. The demon fought for every word. Pain and exhaustion cracked his speech, turning the conversation into a jerky, hard-to-follow mess. The captain suddenly caught a weird, impossible-to-place sound, and it snapped his focus instantly, while the main werewolf froze, then scanned the area cautiously, stunned by what he just heard. Right in front of the captain, a totally unfamiliar image snapped into existence out of nowhere. He froze on the spot, stunned, and felt his heart race with dread and anticipation for what hit next. The captain couldn't make sense of what the heck was happening, no matter how hard he tried. Ray cradled the battered werewolf in his arms, holding on like he couldn't let go. The main demon couldn't even process it. This totally shattered everything he believed, and the werewolf snapped that it had asterisk to happen another way, blaming the man he was convinced set them up. Ray knew if that lead werewolf slipped away, their whole plan would collapse, so he snapped his focus to the demon, lunged at him with everything he had, and refused to stop until it was over. The werewolf commander's master plan blew up in his face. His carefully built strategy collapsed, and the whole situation spun off in a wild, unexpected direction. Night had fallen and Ray wasted zero time. He slammed a heavy chain around the demon commander, stripping him of freedom and taking control before things spiraled. Thanks to Lyanna, no one got hurt. She snapped into action, rallied help for the kids and every other resident, and guided them into safety before danger could strike. Ray hid another plan in plain sight, something nobody saw coming. While the villagers, clueless about his goal, stayed on edge, confused and terrified. "We have to smoke out the traitor lurking inside the village before anyone else gets hurt. Good news is the Wanderer Sam already stepped in and everyone's safe." Ray made sure he didn't finish off the werewolves. He needed them breathing so he could squeeze out their testimony and finally uncover what was really going on to crack the investigation. Ray was grilled about why he didn't just slaughter the demons, because that choice would have made everything way easier and spared him a mountain of trouble. You didn't have to spare any werewolves for answers. Without their testimony, the traitor was obvious, and so was the mastermind behind everything that happened. That same thing went down in the fight against Vegan. He could have been wiped out in an instant, but the young man chose to spare him like he had a plan and expected something big to come out of it. Taking the easy way now might feel convenient, but those half measures can come back hard later, bringing deep regret and consequences you never saw coming. Then once more the shadow returned. Out of nowhere, a voice yanked the Wanderer's attention, calling him Sam. The village chief stepped out and Ray blurted, "Is Oki okay after all that?" The chief said, "He's fine, nothing serious," then shot back, "So tell me, how did you know?" About the werewolf attack on the village at night, Ray started firing the whole story at Oki, how he found out and every brutal detail behind what happened. The young man leaned in and told the elder, "I'll go ask the guardian of the divine tree. He's pretending to be dead just to keep me from noticing him, and I'll find out what he's really watching." The villagers stared in stunned silence, absolutely shocked by what they just heard. Nobody expected the guardian of the divine tree to pull off such slick secrecy. Everything felt like it was perfectly on track, until suddenly it all went sideways. But the traitor was Atrasin. Nobody in their wildest dreams could have predicted the guy who would betray their trust, and the whole room detonated with shock at the news. It's wild, everyone swore he was the divine tree's gentle, loyal guardian, but the truth hit like a truck. He was a traitor who shattered every promise he'd ever stood for. Shanoka, Sam came running up and she couldn't believe her eyes. Atra was really in league with the werewolves. In her heart, she'd always been sure he stayed by the village and fought off every threat. The elder commanded the whole village to lean in and listen as he spoke his crucial words, and just as the Wanderer was about to slip out, he caught Oki's attention and whispered something that shook it all. Ray dropped a bombshell. The guardian of the divine tree teams up with werewolves and can swing the gate open for them at night, and the elder actually witnessed it firsthand from the shadows. Oki refused to believe it until Ray told him to follow through. Turns out Atra really was the traitor all along, and it absolutely shattered everyone who once trusted him, believing he was their protector. The guardian barked at Ray with raw, unmistakable fury, his harsh, demanding tone leaving zero doubt in the air. Atra stared at the young man, shocked and wary, and demanded how he could possibly know she was the traitor. Then Ray just smiled calmly and told the keeper his nose was so sharp it gave him everything away. Atra had a werewolf stench so unmistakable it practically shouted, and yeah, any pack of werewolves is no joke. So the fact that this guardian could face demons alone is wild to wrap your head around. Because of that sharp little insight, the young man finally realized the knight was in league with the werewolves. No other explanation could make this wild situation and his weird behavior fit. In the village air, a faint stench of werewolves lingered, and everyone knew they were the ones snatching people. So crossing the divine gates meant needing a guardian's help, and Atra was obviously the traitor behind it. Atra also threw lies at everyone. Every time he sent travelers on their way, he swore he'd check the area using divine power. acting like only some towering great saint from the imperial capital could pull off something like that. The Guardian taunted Ray and started laying blame on him, and just like that, everything spiraled into a tangled, head-spinning mess. Atra, crushed by despair but burning with willpower, snapped and chose the most brutal path, killing every last person herself so nobody would ever get a chance to fight back. Ray pressed the Keeper, demanding to know why he'd help werewolves, and Atra fired back fast, short, confident answers that made it sound like the real reason was buried under the surface. The young man could tell the knight made a deal with demons just to stay alive, putting his own skin above everyone and everything else. Atra is convinced werewolves are terrifyingly powerful, and that's exactly why holy knights keep getting killed by them again and again, so their strength and cruelty don't just scare people, they demand both respect and fear. That's why the Keeper snapped and struck a deal with the demons. Ray spotted the lie instantly in Atra's eyes, and the way he talked killed any trust. So the young man snapped, pressing the Keeper for the real details of the deal, desperate to uncover why this bargain was even happening. Atra confessed that he'd been feeding the demons, and that's why they kept him alive. Turns out that alliance was exactly what the Guardian needed to fling open the divine gates and unleash the werewolves into the village. The Keeper snapped, "Ray, you nailed it," proving his guess was dead on. And now who cares, it's too late for any of that to matter. Atra keeps up the threats, vowing he'll kill Ray and anyone else who dares to get in his way, and the traitor can only think, this is it, this is where it all ends. The Guardian promised him a promotion if he killed the very man who'd beaten the werewolves, so he could finally ditch that hated job and escape a lifetime stuck in this cursed village. The young man snapped that he didn't care. If the village got wiped out, then the Guardian of the Divine Tree wouldn't be needed anymore, so his whole duty would feel pointless. Ray leaned in and demanded to know why Atra chose to become a holy knight and what snapped him into making that life-changing decision. So the so-called traitor pushed back, asking for the details all over again. To become a holy knight, you've got to accept the divine power. If it won't take hold, you'll die. So after that brutal test, you earn the title. The young man then turned to Atra and asked, was he right? The traitor leaned in and confirmed it. Every word was the real deal. Ray says that when someone's ready to bet their life, it's usually because there's big money on the line, or because they love someone so deeply that they'll burn every bridge and make any sacrifice just to protect them. After surviving that brutal test, you know his drive was rock solid, like he'd risk everything for someone precious and close to his heart. The traitor admitted it was exactly true. No soft talk, no dodging, and no hiding what he really felt. Atra gained this power for one reason alone: to shield the people he truly loved, no matter what trials tore through his path. The Guardian snapped back to an important family story out of nowhere, then leaned in and demanded to know if Ray had ever heard of the incident, because it shaped his whole life. Ray can feel the traitor's pain, but he won't buy into revenge, because it makes no sense here and won't fix anything, so he demanded the Keeper stop. The traitor blared with wild excitement that Ray didn't get it. Right then, everything Atra had was ripped away from him, and there was nothing he could do to stop it or rewrite what was already happening. The Guardian slams the truth down. Even if Ray begs, it's already too late. Those traitors' loved ones can't be dragged back anymore. And for the traitor himself, his family wasn't just important, they were his entire life, the only reason he ever existed. Driven by that fury, the traitor slips into full-blown monster mode, ready to slaughter every single soul, not just in his village, but across the entire country too, sparing absolutely no one as he chases his goal. Ray shoved every distracting thought aside, went deadly serious, and braced himself for the chaos ahead, and the brutal decisions waiting to be made. The traitor didn't slow down for a second. He kept attacking like a storm, already set to end Ray without a flicker of doubt, and now all that stood between the Guardian and disaster was someone brave enough to stop him. The traitors erupted into a furious assault on Ray, screaming threats as they charged. So Ray snapped into motion, barreled into a counterattack on Atra, and fought like his life and his loved ones depended on it. The traitor clung to his wife, his rock, his anchor, the reason he'd kept going for years. Since childhood, the Guardian and his beloved had been inseparable, yet she was always breakable, always on the verge of falling apart, so Atra swore he'd become a holy knight, determined to stand between her and any threat that dared to come near. The traitor figured if he pushed through a brutal trial, he'd earn the rank of Holy Knight, unleash terrifying power, and finally unlock doors he never even dreamed were possible. He swore he'd wield this power for protection, not profit, guarding everyone he loves and staying on the side of justice, even when it demanded brutal sacrifices from him. Atra and Dirt got dragged through a living nightmare of torments and brutal trials. Then divine power crashed into them and they finally rose as a holy knight, sworn to protect their destiny. Before long, the couple welcomed 2 kids, a boy and a girl, and it felt like the universe handed them a miracle, because during that stretch the keeper was finally overflowing with joy and meaning. He swore with everything in him and no matter the cost that he'd guard his family's happiness, cherish them fiercely, and keep every threat and danger far away. Just when it felt like they'd finally caught their breath, happiness shattered, because fate slammed them with brutal trials almost immediately. Under the cover of night, they were commanded to become the guardian of a divine tree, one packed with power beyond imagination. He had to fiercely guard the remote village of Rudin, trapped in the most dangerous corner of the world. Atra couldn't stay with his family to watch his children grow, and that crushed him, pain and hopelessness swallowing him whole. Even though he swore to become a holy knight to protect his family, fate ripped him away from them, stealing the chance to stand by their side himself. His service was locked in for 10 years, then when the clock hit 0, the knight would be ripped away and handed to a new post. Maybe a different village, maybe a giant city where he'd keep carrying out his duties and shielding others. Living out in that remote village day after day, the traitor slowly started to lose his grip. He couldn't even remember why he needed that massive power or what he was truly chasing in the first place. Then disaster struck. Overnight, the city where the Atra family lived was slammed by a brutal attack, and the knight's life, along with everyone he loved, was ripped apart forever. Later, he pieced it all together. Turns out the government had thrown dozens of holy knights into that place, all but the captain's stamped diamond level. Only 2 nights and half the townsfolk made it out, but the keeper's family was gone. It felt totally unreal and impossible, yet deep down Atra knew it was the cold, brutal truth, and he had to face it and survive. Then fresh, shocking truths about what that mission really was surfaced, and Atra had to rip up his whole understanding of his duties. The city turned into a holy knight training ground, and when the imperial government refused to spare its veterans to rescue some small town, the fresh recruits got thrown straight into a real battle. Where in the world did all of this even come from? Out of 4 holy knights sent to wipe out the werewolves on a death march, only 2 clawed their way out alive. They spilled every detail to the keeper, completely unaware he was right there, living in the very city they were fleeing. Those 2 barely survived because they bolted out of a dangerous mission at the last second. Because in moments like that, it's not raw strength that saves you, it's speed to escape. One knight finally broke the silence and admitted straight to everyone that his own life mattered more and he'd never get himself killed during training. And another knight backed him up, saying you've got to look out for number 1. Right then, Atrasin, despite every conviction he'd sworn to, still found himself nodding to the escaped knights because deep down he knew survival could hit harder than dying as a hero. The Guardian threw himself into danger, trained with everything he had, and fought through countless lethal ordeals, surviving them all just to protect the family he loved more than life itself. Time kept grinding Atra down, his heart filled with pain and tearing cracks, while the Guardian watched his own soul and love slowly collapse under wave after wave of losses and shattered hopes. The moment the extermination mission was handed to him, he let 2 knights get butchered by ferocious werewolves on purpose, and the other 2 knights who somehow made it out alive in the city. Suckjacks then slammed through part A to G18 like a machine. Even the werewolf couldn't wrap his head around it, how the keeper decided to slaughter the knights, so he demanded answers. Were the ones lying dead really Atra's friends? The traitors just sneered back, no, they weren't his friends. They weren't his friends at all. After what went down, they became his enemies. A familiar of one of the 4 deadly demons showed up, and Ulfric, the werewolf leader, stepped in, using that familiar to let the main demon reach Atra. Ulfric loved how the keeper craved chaos because his own plans lined up perfectly with the werewolves' hunger for it, and right then, the werewolf leader stepped forward and offered HER if they wanted to tear down the Bent Empire together. So the keeper hooked up with Ulfric and wasted no time. He launched a plan to wipe the village off the map. While everyone else was busy minding their own business, Atrasin slipped the werewolves into the village under cover of night, then watched them steal people away in total silence, leaving the whole town trembling with terror, completely clueless that betrayal was right under their noses. If you strip the village of people one by one, slowly, steadily, until no residents are left, then the village will vanish completely, erased from the map like it never existed. Ray leaned in, stunned by what he heard so much that he barely managed a word, trying to wrap his head around every crucial detail. He didn't stumble into it. This was a razor-sharp plan to break free from the divine tree's guardian curse. Every time the werewolves snatched another victim, guilt and crushing regret flooded the guardian's chest, boiling his soul in total inner turmoil, and still, he couldn't stop. Ulfric the demon's voice and every razor-sharp word kept rattling inside Atra's skull. The guardian couldn't rein it in, his mind went hazy and he straight up snapped, losing control of everything, not even able to tell what he was doing anymore or why he kept moving at all. Atra can't take it anymore. She's done with this chaos and she's ready to cut it all off once and for all so she can finally breathe, find peace and see clearly. Once Atra wipes out every last inhabitant and finally tastes the freedom he begged for, dread crashes down, because now he can't stop wondering what's left of him after all that blood and ruin. The Keeper has to hear the truth, but he's totally lost, shaking his head, wondering what he's been fighting for all this time. Atra pushes for an answer, desperate to uncover what this whole nightmare is really about. The Keeper snapped out of that idea fast. Once he realized his family could never be brought back, all those doubts felt pointless in an instant. Now the gloves come off, Ray and Atra face each other head-on, and this brutal showdown turns their relationship into a make-or-break moment for both of them. Lena begged him to wait just a little longer, warning that the streets were still deadly and there was no way they could gamble with safety right now. Right beside Liana, Shukun and Liz Chan stood glued to the scene, watching every move like their eyes couldn't blink. The girl marched the people out of the village to shield them from the danger, and they've stayed out at a safer distance ever since. At the same time, Ray and Atra are locked in a brutal life-or-death brawl. No one backs down, and it's fight to the last. Ray gritted his teeth, fighting to focus on every weak spot, determined to take down the heated guardian, because every minute that ticks by only makes it wilder, meaner, and more dangerous. Atra stared at every move his opponent made, lining up the perfect opening for a crushing, pinpoint kick. The Guardian lunged out of nowhere, slammed the young man down to the ground, and ripped away his balance and any chance to react in time. Ray's not done yet. She's got the grit and raw determination to take on this brutal fight and still come out on top. Even with exhaustion gnawing at them, the boys kept fighting, refusing to loosen the pressure, scrapping for every inch to seize the upper hand from their enemy. A burst of magic energy rippled through them, backed by combat skills sharpened so perfectly they left zero weak spots. Atra's tore past in strength and skill anyone Ray had ever known. A terrifying monster slammed into the young man, knocking him hard to the ground. Atra stands tall as a diamond-ranked holy knight, proving with every battle that he's top-tier, untouchable, and feared among warriors. Even though he's officially tagged as a Diamond Holy Knight, his fight power screams Ruby Knight, and if you're judging Atra's strength, he lands at Class A or above, wrapped in brutal divine might. Divine power doesn't just appear, it rises and falls with a person's heart, obsession, and raw feelings. In Atra, it probably surges from one thing, a deep, real love for his family. So the real question is, how do you calm the Guardian? The traitor couldn't help but wonder why Ray kept freezing up. Consumed by despair and agony, Atra dropped to her knees and pleaded with the young man to end her life. Anything to make the suffering stop for good. Suddenly, a bunch of people flooded in nearby, and right in the middle stood a girl with tear-streaked cheeks, fighting to stop the tears from spilling. The Guardian slowly, carefully angled the sword to the side, like he was bracing for a surprise strike. The traitor hunkered down, chanting a mysterious spell under his breath, his voice calm yet razor-sharp, like he was summoning something terrifyingly powerful. Atra made the call, burn it all to ashes, leaving not a shred of evidence behind. The Guardian changed right before our eyes, his look twisted into something even more horrific and pitch dark, like the darkness itself crawled into his body. Suddenly, a blazing inferno erupted everywhere, sprinting across the world and devouring everything it touched. Rage and frustration swallowed Atra, so he decided to torch every last villager, convinced Ray still wasn't taking him seriously. The flames leap higher like something unseen is pushing them, blazing brighter and casting jagged, ominous shadows that stain the whole area with pure terror. Spotting the blazing flame, Liana bolted straight toward Ray, her heart hammering with shock, her face tense with panic. The Guardian planted himself and took Leona's deadliest strike head-on, and even with all her strength and rage pouring out, not a single scratch landed. He stood there completely untouched. A massive surge of magic slowly swelled in the air, buzzing with power and making it clear something huge was about to explode. With eyes locked in, Liana clenched her resolve and unleashed a crushing spell called *Liberation*, praying it would flip the battle's fate. Atra spat out that Ray had the perfect opening to end him right then, but somehow he let it slip, and that baffled the young man because he couldn't wrap his head around why the Guardian wanted his death so badly. With power like that, why would he drag himself on some long, twisted detour, joining forces with werewolves and leaning on their help? If his goal was to wreck the village, he could have done it all alone. Atra once again swore, through clenched teeth, that everything would finally be over the moment you were dead. Like he was praying that one clean execution would be the only salvation. He's still totally baffled, stuck with no clue what the next right move even is. Ray still clung to hope of reaching the Keeper. She earnestly tried to bargain with him and end the fight, but Atra's stubborn pride wouldn't budge and he slammed his attack forward anyway. Ray warned that if the Keeper kept on like this, without changing his approach, then even Ray's most precious memories would end up as nothing but ash, and those memories must never ever be burned. The young man kept pressing Atra to remember the faces and voices of everyone he loved most, the ones that hit deepest in his heart. Then the Keeper snapped, seeing how tense everything got, and barked Ray to shut up. Atra's rage flared as she swore that feelings trapped inside, those heavy, soul-choking burdens, should burn themselves away and vanish without a trace, so the person could finally be free from inner pain. The traitor kept the brutal fight going, throwing everything he had until the very end, while Ray snapped into action, knowing this moment demanded backup, and she called Liana to strike the enemy together and flip the whole outcome. The dark-haired girl was hit out of nowhere, demons surged in from every angle, but one guy in the crowd refused to fall so easily, locking onto a fight that would last to his very last breath. The innkeeper is a wreck. Her kids are all that she can think about, and panic and confusion hit her hard because she can't make heads or tails of what's happening or why everything is spiraling the way it is. Ray stared in disbelief as the werewolf reknit his arms and legs, and at the same time the demon's body morphed into brand new forms, because werewolves don't usually wield power that strong. Everything's going south fast. Looks like the werewolf is plotting to bolt from the village. Ray backed away from the divine gate while still battling Atra, and if this pace keeps up, the boy won't make it back in time, plus the werewolf could slip out of the village, but don't count them out yet. Ray snapped his gaze to HR, his face deadly serious, and told him, the Keeper really had lost everything, hope looked gone for good, but the traitor still had someone close who could cling to life. The feelings the kids got were nothing but a lie, because that young man somehow reached straight into the Keeper's most honest, hidden heart, and it shattered him with doubts he couldn't silence. Suddenly, Atra's mind snapped back to words a dear someone once told him, words he'd carried forever, and now they hit with crushing meaning right at this decisive moment. The Guardian couldn't hide the agony he felt as the people of his home were slaughtered one by one, pain and bitter regret burning in his chest. Because for Atra, it wasn't just his family that mattered, but the warm smiles of everyone who stood beside him. The Guardian saw the danger closing in, then locked in his final choice. He'd protect Shu and Liz from the werewolves, and he'd stand between them and death if he had to. The werewolf was totally rattled, because Atra's aim was dead wrong. The Guardian swung his spear and somehow triggered the divine gate, and that single move immediately wrecked the werewolf's plan to kidnap the kids and vanish with them into the unknown right then. Suddenly, the gates burst into a dazzling, pure light, flooding the whole area with instant brilliance. The demon was utterly stunned, and Atra snapped into action, pouncing on the werewolf in a heartbeat. In a brutal showdown, the Keeper slammed the werewolf down and proved, with pure strength and razor agility, that nothing could touch him. Atra let out a deep, shaky breath, exhaustion finally crushing him after the brutal fight. Then the children clung to the Guardian with fierce warmth, hugging him tight because they felt his care and pouring out every ounce of gratitude. The kids thanked the traitor with all their hearts for saving them, while Liz froze in terror and couldn't think straight. Atra, though, just shrugged, convinced he hadn't done anything worth all that gratitude. Ray finally admitted he messed up by putting the kids in danger, because if that gate hadn't been triggered, the young man wouldn't have had a split second to rush in and save Shu and Liz. Atra's real, heartfelt feelings were what made it happen. With a steady, supportive grip, the Guardian reached out to Ray like he finally understood. And right then, Atra cracked the answer he'd been chasing for ages, the one that had been haunting him. The Guardian of the Divine Gate shut his eyes and poured his focus into one vivid thought: his family, because they were the people he'd do anything for. Right there, he watched smiling, happy children run around, along with the innkeeper and the rescued villagers, finally able to live in peace, safe from fear and danger. Atra finally slammed down the truth and confirmed it. After all that time, the answer to his torturing question was finally in his hands. The boys grinned and shook hands, respect and friendship ringing in every smile, while Ray swallowed his defeat in silence, calm, dignified, and unshaken.